Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Broke Past the Limit. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The day starts off fine. Sarutobi is sitting at his desk, neglecting all the unimportant paperwork that he should be doing in theory but can leave to his secretaries in practice, when Naruto comes in the door. It has been 5 years, and still he winces when he thinks that. He told Minato it'd be okay, not fine, but just okay, to name a boy Naruto, but naming his baby girl the same was taking things a bit far. He was tempted to change things on the fake certificate, but considering that her name was all she had left from her parents, he couldn't bring himself to take it, too, away from her. Sarutobi notices her before she comes in the door, signals his ANBU guards away with a patterned flare of chakra, and slides his reading material in a drawer, locking it for good measure. He really does not want the little kid getting a second look at his book. He doesn't want the kid to be perverted, or at least not because of him. The lovely and dangerous Kushina might be dead now, but he just knows she'll find a way to hurt him if that happens. It is perhaps because of this line of reasoning that he is shocked, though admittedly he would have been shocked anyway. Gigi, his surrogate granddaughter, says, "What's a PP and why don't I have one?" Sarutobi finds himself caught between laughing and crying for a moment. Then he drags a hand slowly down his face, takes his pipe out of his mouth, and tells Kushina, in his head, that this is not his fault. And anyway, "Naruto," he says, "you're a girl, you don't have boy parts." While he can no longer claim he's too young to talk to kids about this kind of thing, Sarutobi decides he can say he's too old to give the talk a fourth time. Once was really enough for a lifetime. "Are you insulting me, Gigi?" Naruto exclaims. Sarutobi cannot even bring himself to be surprised anymore. "What?" he manages to say, "do you mean by that?" Naruto has the grace to look embarrassed at her incomprehensibility. "Well, I know being a girl isn't a bad thing, but all the other guys get mad when they're called girls, so I have to get mad too." Or maybe she was embarrassed for some other reason and she's still as incomprehensible as ever. Why do you have to imitate the other guys? Sarutobi is beginning to get an idea of what's going on, but he can't for the life of him imagine why. "You're a girl now. You always have been." Naruto looks confused, which is adorable, but Sarutobi can't even focus on her adorableness right now. His head is a mess and he needs some sleep and Aika and Minato to be back here instead of him. An hour later, Sarutobi has a vague idea of the disaster that happened here. When he deposited Naruto at the orphanage at the tender age of 2, she lived in her steadily worsening dress for 2 months before a more sympathetic orphanage worker threw her an oversized t-shirt and a pair of cargo briefs. After a particularly bad haircut worsened by Naruto's fascination with all things metal and shiny and pointy and dangerous, she came out looking like a boy. Sarutobi had actually somewhat watched that happen, but he didn't think it would be an issue. Apparently, it was an issue with the other girls, who proceeded to snub her as an icky boy. The boys mostly left her alone, too, especially because the caretakers didn't like the children playing with the demon child. One boy, Akira, befriended her because it wasn't allowed, and ended up bringing her into the boy group. And now, Naruto thinks she is a boy. And apparently has thought so for the past 3 years. When Naruto returns to the orphanage, she goes to find Akira. Akira and she are best friends, and because everybody likes Akira, everybody likes her too. They talk about everything and play ball together, and even though Naruto is slim and a little taller and Akira is more muscular, they are evenly matched. "Let's play," she says as soon as she bursts into the room. Akira is really touchy about people going into his room, but he lets Naruto because they're best friends, so Naruto is really surprised to see Tomo in there too. "Oh, hi, Tomo," she adds as an afterthought. Akira looks pained. "I can't," he says. Tomo nods, wisely, from behind his back, and Naruto wants to sucker punch him in the face. "Why not?" "'Cause you're a girl." She stares at him. "Matron said you're a girl and I can't play with you because girls aren't any fun dash. But I'm fun." Naruto shouts. "We have lots of fun together, you said so." He frowned. "I did not." "Did too." "Did not." "Did too." Matron's voice slams through the door before Akira can respond again. Naruto. Girls aren't allowed in boys' rooms. Akira, maybe caught up in the argument, maybe angry that his best friend has deceived him, maybe too young to know better, maybe 1,000 other reasons, sticks out his tongue. He shouts, "Yeah, that's right. Get out of here, no. Nobody wants you here." But Naruto doesn't know the mind of Akira. All she knows is her best friend betrayed her and doesn't want her, and that she would never have betrayed him like that, even if he was a girl or the monster under her bed or the QB itself. Betrayal hurts, but she doesn't cry there. Crying is weak, and anyway, girls cry, and oh, but she is a girl. She runs fleet-footed back to her room and slams the door, and only then does she let the hot, angry tears seep out. A little later, Matron comes and tells her to move to the girls' side of the rooms. Only there are more girls than boys and all the rooms are filled up, so for now she has to make do with a little closet and a cot. She only hopes the girls will like her now, even if Akira said girls are icky, because what Akira said doesn't matter and he betrayed her and the room is small and smells like damp mildew and she wants to go back to before. The girls do not like her. They are more obedient than the boys, and Matron told them Naruto was a very bad child, always making trouble with that gang of bad boys. Plus, Naruto doesn't have any dolls, doesn't wear pink, and doesn't talk like them. The girls in the orphanage are all raised pink and cute and soft, in hopes of adoption, because good little girls are adopted and adoption means a better life, and Naruto doesn't seem to know this. And anyway, a little while later Matron confides in Sakura, her favorite, as all the girls know, a nice, polite girl with soft brown hair and appealing blue eyes, that being friends with Naruto might hurt her chances of being adopted. And Sakura, who has a family looking into her, stops being nice to Naruto. Sakura, the leader and the nicest of them all, stops and tells the other girls for the sake of friendship that Naruto might hurt their chances of adoption. Matron said so, and nobody is nice to Naruto. And maybe it is to rebel against them, against their pink and cute and soft, that Naruto does what she does. Maybe it was to rebel against flower arranging and tea pouring that she decides she wants to become a ninja. So in the 5th year of her life, Naruto begs and pleads, and finally Sarutobi enrolls her in the academy, 2 years early. And after she begs and pleads and threatens to tell his secretary a female ANBU, though Naruto doesn't know that about his bad books, he agrees that she can leave the orphanage and he'll get her a nice apartment near the academy, ostensibly to keep her safe and in the right part of town. Because goodness knows little girls can't live on their own without ninja neighbors and a grocery just across the street and the academy only 1 block away. Naruto is a good student. In the orphanage, groups of ninjas sometimes came to teach them how to read, and they were always nice and sometimes played ninja with Akira and the boys after the lesson. Naruto is a good student, and she loves the books they give her, with stories about great battles and adventures and pretty colored pictures. After the class has silent reading time, she goes up to the teacher. "Sensei," she says, "what's chakra?" In the story, the first Hokage, the Shodaime, used something called chakra to move huge trees and defeat an enemy army all by himself. Are we gonna learn to use it? Without looking up from his book, Takimoto says, "You'll learn all about it next year, when you have a little more to work with." What is it? Naruto persists, and Takimoto pushes up his glasses and looks up. What's? His voice suddenly trails off, his eyes widen, his lips thin. Naruto knows and recognizes the signs of anger. Well, it isn't really anger. Sometimes Matron gives her that look, too, half pain and half anger and just a little shame on top of it. Sensei swallows and says, "You don't need to know that." And it should hurt her, but it doesn't, not anymore. She is used to it by now. Once, the nice lady Midori-san who gave her clothes had sat her down and told her, "Some people, like the matron, have lost precious people. Matron's husband was a ninja and he was killed a couple years ago. Those people get bitter and sometimes they get angry." Naruto didn't understand. Midori sighed, blew her bangs out of her eyes and whispered, "When people are hurt, they just want to hurt others. So that they're not alone." So Naruto smiles and nods and goes back to her seat. She sits quietly through the rest of the class, and then they split up into boys and girls. The boys to go learn civilian sports and the girls go learn civilian girl things like flower picking and sewing. Takimoto watches them while they leave. Naruto is last, behind the file of girls who have been friends all their lives. She, like everybody else in the village, knows the great clans by sight. She sees the two textbook Hyuga girls whispering together, several civilian-born girls giggling, and the Nara and Inuzuka girls arguing. She looks back and meets Taimoto's eyes. He gets up and closes the door fast. It slams with finality that echoes in the hall. Naruto eats lunch alone. The Inuzuka is also alone, because the Nara went to eat with the Hyuga. But after 30 minutes, the boys come from their class soccer to eat and the Inuzuka fits in with them. Naruto goes to join them, but she doesn't know how to invite herself in. So she waits until their teacher comes to pick them up. The girl stuff teacher doesn't talk until they are in the second academy training field, all seated on the clover-spotted grass. She sits down with them, in front of them, facing them. "Hey there, munchkins," she says, grinning. "You're now with me, the great Nanoko-sensei, to learn about girl stuff. Do any of you know why you're here?" The civilians shake their heads quietly. The Inuzuka, a girl with wild long hair who is wearing breathes, not a dress, yawns and shouts, "Girl stuff is boring. Why can't we learn cool stuff like the boys? We need to learn to act like normal girls so we can blend in," Nanoko says. "Many of you will be infiltrators one day, and you can't do that if all you know is how to be a ninja." The girls are all quiet, and perhaps she realizes that the topic is a bit too serious. "And hey, we're much more fun than the boys." She leans in conspiratorially and stage whispers, "We get to learn about chakra a bit early." "Cool." The Inuzuka yells. "It's nothing, we're already learning about it in the clan," one of the Hyuga girls huffs. Hesitantly, Naruto says, "Takimoto-sensei said we won't learn chakra until later." Nanoko looks right at her, and Naruto is startled to see nothing in her eyes. Nanoko is smiling. "Takimoto-sensei is a stuck-up old geezer, though you can't tell him I said that." Everyone giggles. "And he's a boy, so he doesn't get to know anything about the secret girl ninja training we do." She pauses and waves her hand in the air. "We were going to start with flower picking, but I think it's a good idea to try to feel your chakra today." "Mother said I can't do that yet," the other Hyuga girl mumbles. "Everybody's a little different," Nanoko says. "Anyway, it's a good idea to practice looking for it. The boys won't get started on it until about next year. We learn it first because we start out with more chakra than boys and our control of what we have develops a bit faster." "Why?" Naruto asks, emboldened by Nanoko's earlier approval. "And what is chakra? Don't you know anything?" The Nara asks, looking away. One of the 5 civilians, a brunette, looks up and says, "Isn't it magic?" Nanoko laughs. "It's life energy." "Well, it's actually a mix of your physical energy and spiritual energy, but since only living things have it, we also call it life energy. And, Blondie," she looks right at Naruto, "we have a bit more because us girls have a bit more life." "What?" The Inuzuka looks confused. She turns to the Nara. "Tomo-chan, what does that mean?" Tomo shakes her head. "Stupid, don't you know that children come from moms?" Nanoko laughs again, though Naruto can't understand why. "But we can't use a lot of it because it's gotta stay in our systems in case we have kids. Anyway, we're also blessed with better control. It's because we have more tenketsu points. Tenketsu points are the places in our body that chakra can come out from. Since we have more, it's easier to let littler amounts out." She turns to the Hyuga girls. "You'll be able to see them when you activate your Byakugan." "Hinata-sama already has hers," one blurts. "She can only keep it for a couple seconds." The other says, looking ready for an argument. Nanoko whistles through her teeth. "That's impressive." The girls stop fighting. "Well, today I'll teach you some tricks on trying to call out your chakra. Probably none of you will manage yet, so you can sit here trying until you get bored and then go out and find me the 10 prettiest flowers you can. Class ends at 3 o'clock, so you've got 2 hours. I expect appealing flowers." Immediately several of them run off to the fields. The civilians all go. Naratomo pauses for a second and then leaves. The Inuzuka calls after her, "Aren't you going to try to get your chakra?" She looks back. "It's illogical," she says. "Father told me that without intensive training to accumulate physical and spiritual energy, Hardly any people bring out their chakra before they are 7. Have you gone through that, Shuka-chan, or are you claiming to be a prodigy child like the copy ninja? Tomo sounds like an adult. The remaining clan children all waver and then run off. But Naruto stays. I didn't even tell them how to reach for their chakra yet, Nanoko says in the silence, sounding amused. She stands up, walks over to where Naruto is sitting, and lays down beside her on her belly. Do you still want to learn? Yes, Naruto says, a little shy, now that she's alone with the teacher. Nanoko smiles. You don't sound very excited. Yes. Naruto says a little louder. Nanoko laughs. Good, she says. Okay, well, reaching for your chakra is easy, but everybody has a different way of doing it. I'll teach you the way that worked for me and then we'll practice it, and if it doesn't work, then we'll try a different one. Naruto nods. Hold out your hand. Now close your eyes and imagine all the color in the world gathering in a ball in your hand. She props herself up on her elbows and demonstrates, holding out a hand and closing her eyes. Naruto closes her eyes. All the colors in the world, she says softly. The whole universe. She concentrates fiercely, trying to pull it in. Something burns along her arm and something tingles on her spine and something hurts like crying in the back of her throat. There is a ball of color in her hand, and it is warm and cold and appealing and ugly and life and death and everything at once and nothing at all. She feels like she can do anything. Naruto can feel Nanoko shift and SCK in a breath. She can taste the blue sky. She can hear the colors in her, all around her. She didn't know that there were so many colors in her body, so many things she could do. By the great sage, Nanoko whispers. And Naruto opens her eyes. There is a ball of color in her hand, and it is blue like the sky, blue like her eyes, blue like freedom. She turns to Nanoko-sensei, and the ball fades with her concentration. Her hand feels heavy and light and a little tired. Was that chakra? She asks, and her voice is filled with wonder. Was that it? In response, Nanoko holds up her own hand. A little ball of chakra, littler than Naruto's, forms at her palm. This is chakra. This is my chakra, she says, voice cracking. But yours was something amazing. Yours was just amazing. Oh, the great sage, yours was amazing. Naruto doesn't know what to say, so she puts her hand down and feels BLD rush into it. Nanoko sits for a while before she talks again, voice shaky. Do you know what this means, Naruto? Do you know what this is? Naruto shakes her head. No, sensei. All my life, I have been overlooked and disadvantaged and disregarded for having small chakra reserves and an agile but not powerful physique. Though women have an advantage in control, it's much easier to improve control than it is to improve chakra capacity. In the world of ninja, men have every advantage. And when I was a little girl, in Kumo, her voice choked up, after my mother died on a mission, my father belittled me and tried to take me off the ninja course. Women ninja are unnecessary, he said, and you're going to get yourself killed. Naruto looks away from her teacher, uncomfortable with her distress. The most famous kunoichi in history is Tsunade of the Sannin of Konoha, and she is famous for being a wonderful medic nin with perfect control. Nanoko's voice rises and Naruto turns back to her. Don't you see? Naruto, you can turn the gender bias on its head. You are only one girl. But with precedence for early chakra training in girls, we can lead the ninja world. Naruto does understand. This is Nanoko-sensei's pain, she knows. But instead of trying to hurt others, she's trying to help people like her. I get it, she says, and louder, I understand. Nanoko's excitement is palpable now, and contagious. Okay, what to start with? She muses aloud. Tree walking is definitely a little too dangerous. She snaps her fingers, suddenly. I got it. Okay, so chakra has a couple of basic properties. There's elemental chakra too, which has totally different qualities, but basic chakra takes whatever shape you want it to, dispels in the air, and attracts. So when you coat your hand with chakra and stick it to the ground, Nanoko layers her hand with a thin screen of blue chakra and puts it to the grass. And bring your hand up, the ground sticks to it. A clump of dirt comes away, attached to her hand. Naruto closes her eyes and thinks. All the colors in the world, she whispers, like a glove. Again, the world rushes around her. This time, she focuses enough to feel it, a form of color next to her, which has to be Nanoko-sensei. Thousands of blades, alive, and towers around her with branches coming out of them. They are color and life and everything. She loses concentration. Naruto opens her eyes to look up at Nanoko. Is something wrong? Her teacher asks. Naruto stopped, not sure how to explain it. I felt something. At Nanoko's encouraging nod, she continues. You were color, and the grass and the trees and the birds were all color and life. When I was little and reached my chakra for the first time, I felt it too. It's because when you're young and you first reach for chakra, you're more sensitive to chakra because you've never felt it before. Over time it fades, but many of us kunoichi train ourselves to keep looking for it. We have more tenketsu to detect the chakra through, so it's a bit easier for us than for boys. You know. Teacher. Nanoko-sensei. 2 of the civilian children come running out of the woods. I found the 10 prettiest flowers ever, teacher. Nanoko takes the flowers and examines them, smiling. She makes no move to talk about Naruto's chakra, and for that, Naruto is grateful. Maybe knowing how different she is would set her even further apart from the class, and she wouldn't want that. With a smile and wave, she runs off to find flowers herself. Every day, Naruto wakes up at 7:30 and goes outside. One of her quiet neighbors always leaves a small piece of bread for breakfast and a small packed lunch. Though Naruto doesn't know it, a female ANBU makes her lunch every day and leaves it at her door at the request of the Hokage. She eats and runs to the academy, getting there early to read the books, which are fun and amusing even if they don't have very many words. Tomoto-sensei is always perfunctorily nice. During class they study languages, math, and history, and then they split up into boys and girls, and the girls go have lunch. The boys arrive to lunch after the girls leave, and she and the rest of the girls follow Nanoko-sensei to one of the academy's 7 training fields. Naruto becomes acquaintances with Naratomo and friends with Inuzuka Shuka. When class lets out at 3, Naruto pretends to leave but idles at the academy gate until Nanoko picks her up. They go to different places every day. After Nanoko realizes that many stores don't accept Naruto, they most often return to the academy grounds or go to Nanoko's apartment complex. Nanoko teaches Naruto for a while, and then Naruto goes back home. In her lonely, empty apartment, Naruto does nothing but practice what she is taught. She puts her hand against the wall and sticks it, testing it by leaning back. Sometimes she falls and bumps her head, and sometimes her hand is forced away, like the wrong ends of 2 magnets were put together. She practices with her feet, which is much harder, trying to stick herself to the floor so she can't take a step. At around 7, there is a knock on her door and dinner is dropped off. She eats in the uncomfortable silence, amusing herself by practicing sticking to the disposable wooden chopsticks, or picking up her food with chakra and one finger. When other children are busy talking and playing and doing things with their families, Naruto has nothing but a minimalist room and her chakra. Nanoko takes another swig of the sake. It's kind of depressing, she admits to her longtime drinking partner and best friend, Yuki. She's some kind of sick genius. She picks up everything in a day or 2. I would have to do nothing but practice with my chakra to pick up manipulation techniques so fast, and as I was the fastest in my class back in Kumo. You're a good teacher, Yuki says, smiling. She can revolutionize the whole world of ninja, Nanoko. With that kind of chakra, she can go to the top of the world. Maybe even get a flea-on-site order like the Yandame. She gulped down another burning sip of sake. But I'm rambling. Yuki laughed. It's okay. Who did you say was your student, again? Nanoko puts down her cup and considers her best friend. I know there's a bit of a stigma against her, she says. And I know it has to do with the Kyuubi. She watches Yuki's eyes narrow. Her name is Uzumaki Naruto, and contrary to what I've heard, she's an agreeable and very cute little girl. Yuki hesitates, considering her words. May want to be careful, she says finally. Several people in this village despise her. Though most orphans live terrible lives anyway, especially in the financial aftermath of the Kyuubi attack, she's lived a worse life than most. The people who don't hate her don't care for her. Then that's all the more reason for me to help her. Nanoko yells. The couple seated at the next table turn to stare, so she lowers her voice. Are you listening to me? This girl's got talent and dedication. She's going places. Yuki stares at her best friend for several moments. I'm not arguing with that, she says in a low voice. I'm just worried for you. There are some people who hate her enough to hurt her, and to hurt people who help her. Nanoko smiles. It's sweet that you're worried, Yuki-chi, but I'm a ninja, you know. I'm more than capable of taking care of myself. It's not just civilians. There are lots of ninjas who lost family to the Kyuubi. Ninjas hate her too. I wouldn't be surprised if the administration disliked her. What do you mean? Nanoko gapes. She lowers her voice to a whisper. The Hokage himself turned in the forms for her registration at the academy. Nobody else could overwrite the age limit law, anyway. The teachers were in an uproar about it for weeks. Yuki leans in. If the Hokage was really partial to her, she whispers, she wouldn't have been left with all the other children in that ratty orphanage, right? And I hear that she, in particular, was so ratty and grimy, nobody could tell if she was a girl or a boy. The more Nanoko thinks about it, the more sense it makes. With that kind of talent, if the Hokage were really interested in Naruto, he would notice. Anyway, Yuki continues, you're from Kumo, and pretty new to the village anyway. There's already a bias against you. You don't want to make things worse for yourself by associating with her, right? No, I don't, Nanoko thinks. She still remembers the incredible hostility everybody treated her with when she first arrived as a runaway from Kumo. In retrospect, it was only prudent of them to be suspicious of refugees arriving in Konoha so soon after the Kyuubi attack. She had barely gotten her Chunin-level teaching license, even though she'd been ready for the Jounin exam before what had happened in Kumo. But I can't just leave her, she whispers, reluctantly. I mean, she's my closest student. She's not even just a student. Nanoko sighs. You'd know if you met her. She's got a certain charm, along with all that skill. A charisma. Yuki frowns, brows furrowing. Go to sleep and think about it. That girl is dangerous. Mark my words, you don't want to get messed up with her. She empties her sake cup in one swing. I'm telling you, Noko, you're going to regret this. Regret? Regret hadn't crossed her mind. But Nanoko finds herself starting to doubt for the first time. Maybe Naruto's amazing concentration and skill with chakra is not a miracle, but an omen. After class, Naruto waits at the gate of the academy. After a while, she sits down, resting her back against the wall. Nanoko is later than usual, but after the lights have dimmed down and even Timoto has left, she arrives with arms full of books. She sets them down on the ground beside Naruto and sits down. Perplexed, Naruto asks, "What's wrong, Nanoko-sensei? Are we going to have a lesson today?" "Nothing's wrong," Nanoko replies automatically. Then she corrects herself. "No, there is something. Nangan, I want you to know something." She leans in and Naruto does too. Nanoko whispers, as softly as possible, "The administration might be against you. Do you know what administration is?" Naruto shook her head a little. "That's the Hokage and the people with animal masks." Nanoko leans back a little to watch Naruto's face. She wants Naruto to understand the importance of this. "But the old man's always been nice to me," Naruto says, faltering. "Sometimes people put on masks," Nanoko says. "And if the Hokage did want to help you, he wouldn't have left you in the orphanage so long. He has absolute power in this village, after all. It's very dangerous. Naruto, if someday I disappear, if I'm not teaching or at my apartment, you need to run away. You need to go as far and fast as possible." "Leave Konoha?" Naruto asks, startled. "No, you can't leave Konoha. It would be too hard to get around the gate sentries and the wall. But there are places in Konoha where the sun doesn't shine. Do you know what I'm saying? There are places where the law is not enforced by ninja. Konoha is a huge city, and though the red light district is not a safe place for little girls, it's safer than having trained ninja after you." Frightened, Naruto nods. "Ninja are dangerous." "Okay, Nanoko-sensei." Nanoko leans back and takes a couple books from her stack. Now, one of the administrators asked me to run this to the tower. She smiles softly. We can't have a lesson today, but I'll see you tomorrow. Naruto nods. See you tomorrow, Nanoko-sensei. Time's up, Timoto calls. Only then does Naruto walk up with her test paper in hand. She lays it flat on her palm, using Chakra to stick it to her hand, and as usual, in the rush of students, nobody notices her strange way of holding the paper. When she first tried this, the paper shredded and ripped with her Chakra. Now, even under the pressure of knowing she can't redo the test, the sticking exercise works perfectly. Class is a fun challenge every day. Naruto knows she's in the lower ranges of the class, but the other kids are all bigger and older than she is, and she feels like she's learning a lot. As usual, she eats lunch next to Naratomo and Inuzuka Shuka. They're not great friends, but they stick together at lunch so none of them are alone. After the boys arrive, Shuka runs off to play ball with them. Are you going to go? Tomo asks quietly. Naruto is startled. Every time Shuka goes, she thinks about leaving to play, but then she remembers Akira and the boys she used to run around with. It hurts a little, so she stays. But she doesn't say any of that. No. Tomo nods and fishes out some candy from her pocket. You can't tell Shuka-chan, okay? She whispers. I only brought 2 this time, and it's her fault for leaving us for the boys. Naruto laughs and eats the peppermint candy. She wants to tell Tomo that this is special for her, that she doesn't get candy very often, that Tomo is her friend. But the words don't form themselves. Thanks, is all she manages to say. Tomo hums, smiling. Girls, it's time for class. Nanoko's voice rings out in the academy courtyard. Naruto gets out of her chair for the mad dash to be first to Nanoko, but this time, she waits for Tomo before setting off running. They arrive at Nanoko at almost the same time, moments before 2 civilian children and a worn-out Shuka. I don't know why you insist on playing with them when you can only play for a couple of seconds, Tomo whispers. It's right after lunch too. And you always get dirty and worn out right before class starts. It's fun, Shuka says, breathing. My cousin's a great kicker. And the guys are a lot of fun. That's all she says. Naruto hears the tense undercurrent. She knows that Tomo is angry about something, and Shuka is only fanning the flames. The candy, she thinks, might be Tomo's offer to get Naruto on her side. She's seen the taking sides strategy happen with other children, but it's never happened to her. She's never been close friends with more than one person, and it was always assumed that she was on Akira's side. She smiles a little. It's a pleasant feeling having friends. Today, Nanoko teaches them about how to talk about clothes. For the civilian girls, no instruction is necessary. Nanoko shows them all a shirt and the girls go off critiquing the color, cut, and style of it. My sister says loose-cut shirts make you look fatter, one announces. She told me if I ever wore one she'd disown me. You're so wrong. Another exclaims. It depends on the cut of the loose shirt. This one's got a nice cut, and it makes you look skinnier. See how it dangles at the right places. The clan-born girls and Naruto sit silently, bemused by the commotion. Nanoko turns to them. Don't you girls have anything to say? You've been awfully quiet, and this is the 10th piece I've shown. One of the Hyuga girls, Naruto can't tell which one, even after all this time, they both look so alike, says, we're not allowed to wear non-clan styles. Clothing doesn't matter much to a ninja, as long as you can fight. If you're stuck infiltrating an enemy nation with Hyuga wear, you're doomed, Nanoko explains patiently. Hyuga don't have to infiltrate. Our eyes are too valuable and conspicuous to give up to the enemy. Our bloodline is suited for battle more than cowardly things like spying. Nanoko shakes her head. Listen, kiddo, everything I teach you has a reason. And everything you learn can and will eventually help you. You may not understand how yet, but later you'll regret your pride. Pride only makes you weak. Realizing how harsh the atmosphere is, she turns to the other girls. Do any of you have anything to say? When it's obvious Tomo and Shuka are reticent, Naruto proffers, it's a nice color. The Sandame's rage is palpable. Panther and Gull flinch back a little, unwilling to raise their own chakra to ease the killing intent. That might be seen as insubordination, And they're in enough trouble as it is. You fools, Sarutobi says again. Why didn't you report this to me? He slams the paperweight down on his desk, and the desk trembles. I told you to report anything and everything suspicious. Panther gulps. With all due respect, sir, she manages, all the academy teachers have been thoroughly vetted. The clans wouldn't stand for anything else. Are you suggesting, Panther, that not only do I have 2 incompetent ANBU, but I also have an incompetent intelligence department? Sarutobi raises his chakra again. Kurosaki Nanoko moved into Konoha only 4 years ago, from Kumo of all places. She was only accepted because of our need for active ninja. It says here, he slams a hand into the file on his desk, that she pulled some ridiculous sob story about an abusive father to garner sympathy. And now, she is trying to get close to the Jinchuriki of Kyubi, a girl who is arguably among the ranks of the most powerful people alive. What does this look like to you? Panther bows her head. Yes, sir, you're right, Tokage-sama. Bring the girl to Ibiki before the sun sets. Naruto feels a sinking feeling in her stomach. You can call me Minai-sensei. I will be taking the place of Nanoko-sensei in teaching you girls. Would somebody please tell me what you've been taught so far? The new lady, a blonde with a crisp bun and appealing hazel eyes, smiles down at them. The girls shift with unease. Nanoko was fun, and sat down with them and talked to them like they were all friends. Minai-sensei doesn't seem to be anything like her. Where's Nanoko-sensei? Is she coming back soon? Shuka blurts. Nanoko-sensei has taken a sick leave. Minai's smile fades. I didn't want to tell you girls this, but she's been diagnosed with a disease. It's highly contagious, and she doesn't want to affect any of you, so she's taken a leave. Nanoko-sensei didn't look sick yesterday, Naruto says. And that means she's coming back when she's better, right? Minai's eyes are hard when she looks at Naruto. Naruto knows the answer almost before she opens her mouth, so she doesn't wait. She turns and runs for the gate as fast as she can. Naruto, where are you going? Tomo yells from behind her, but Naruto just keeps sprinting. You need to run away. You need to go as fast and far as possible. The Hokage leans back in his chair. Minai-chan seems to be handling the children well, for now. He suches the crystal ball to a view of the intelligence headquarters, where Ibiki is having a civilized conversation with the teacher. Results so far are inconclusive, or so it appears. The crystal ball is one of those wonderful Hokage perks not offered to anybody not wearing the hat. It has a variety of uses, many of which ensure that Sarutobi will never hand the hat down to Jiraiya, but also several downfalls. The ball has a temporal delay of about 5 minutes. And, contrary to its name, it is not an all-seeing ball. Sarutobi can only focus it on places he knows intimately or chakra signatures he can feel. A chakra sensor would probably make better use of the ball, but it's a powerful tool and not to be given to any random kunoichi who spent her whole life learning how to sense chakra. After watching the proceedings for a little while, he decides that enough is enough and Ibiki will hand him the results whenever they're ready. Sarutobi spends another long while marking down paperwork and reviewing trade agreements and the like. Though his administration department has extensive checks and balances that run through all the paperwork before it gets to him, he still has to verify everything important. It's a pain in the neck. 5 or 6 packets later, he turns the crystal ball to the Academy's training ground 3. Minai-chan's blonde hair sticks out from all the rest of the children. Sarutobi turns, almost moving on before he realizes what's wrong. Naruto is gone. Naruto has never been down this street before. The buildings are a little dirty, but very brightly painted. The women, some of which sit on the doorsteps in ornate clothes with heavily made-up faces, breathe foul-smelling smoke into the air. Noise wafts from putrid shops. A tall building with brightly flashing lights proclaims itself Kanehagakure Casino. Discover your fortunes today. She realizes she's the only child here, though she supposes that is because everybody else is in school. Naruto glances around and sees no ninja, so she slows to a walk. She is staring at the ground trying not to step in anything unsavory when a dirty hand grabs her arm. What are you doing here, Lilu gal? The man who speaks to her is missing a couple of teeth. His face is stained with mud and weather, dotted with moles, and lined with wrinkles. "Come and stay with ol' me." "Let go of me," Naruto says. "You're dirty." His face contorts. "What did ye say? Ye filthy Liluware girl. I'll show ye." He raises a hand and Naruto cowers, frightened, when a voice stops him. "What are you doing, you old beggar? That girl is a maid for my establishment, and if you don't unhand her, Mother Tessa will be down on you." His hand goes down and he releases Naruto, smiling feebly. Nothing, honorable consort miss. I was just asking for some money. Didn't mean to displease Miss May none. I is just gonna be going now, thank you very kind, ma'am." He hobbles off, much faster than Naruto thought possible. She turns to face her savior, a appealing woman in splendid clothing. Her hair is up in elaborate knots and her face lightly painted in pastel colors. The light smile on her face fades as she considers Naruto. "Who are you? What are you doing here, girl? This isn't the right part of town for little girls, no matter what I just said." Naruto stutters a little. I'm Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. I'm in danger. I have to run. Far away. They took Nanoko-sensei, and now they're going to take me and I have to hide and... May shushes her. "This street isn't any place for any kind of story. No place is place for a story. If you want to live in a place like this, don't tell anybody anything. It'll only hurt you in the end." She considers Naruto again. "Well, I suppose you should come with me. You look fast enough, and you'll be a hard worker if you know what's good for you. Maybe Mother Tessa will want a runner girl. Goodness knows we can use one." "Thank you," Naruto says. "Thank you, thank you. You don't have anything to thank me for." "Ruto-chan." The call comes from her left, and Naruto tiredly picks up her body from its resting position against the wall and jogs down the hallway. "Ruto-chan, come take the laundry to the cleaners," Mei says as soon as Naruto bursts in through the door. "And Siki-chan wants you too." Naruto takes the sheets, which are stained with sweat and things she doesn't want to think about, folds them up wordlessly so all that's showing is clean, and heads out the door. "Stop by after you're done," Mei calls after her, more softly. "I don't have any customers for a while, so we can sit and rest on a bed." It's Mei's kind of mercy, Naruto knows, and she's grateful for it. "Okay," she agrees. And then she runs next door. Siki is sitting, knees drawn up to her chest as usual, on the elaborate bedspread. "Siki-san, do you want some coffee like usual?" Siki glances up, for a moment unguarded and empty. Then her face fills with a smile, transforming the sad lines etched in her skin to happy ones, bright and overwhelming and appealing. "And fake. That would be lovely, dear," she says. "Add an extra sugar today, okay?" And Naruto knows it's a bad day already for Siki to need that extra sugar, though it's not evening yet, and in the evening at the house, things only get worse. Coffee is a couple doors over at the salon. She'll have to go out of the house, then, because the house only has tea. Naruto was almost 7 when she got here, and they didn't send her around on the streets. She didn't want to go either, because Nanoko had told her to hide and wear better than the house, where even things like real names and your story are kept secret. It's been a year, and she feels safer and knows more, so she runs errands now. Since she has to go out, Naruto stops by the other rooms on her way to the door. The girls are all mostly getting ready for the evening, and some of them are out shopping or at the salon. Tasha has some clothes to run down, and Naruto takes that and a basket to hold the laundry in. There will be more in the morning, after the night, but Naruto can't carry more than 2 rooms worth of laundry anyway. She runs out the door, basket between her right arm and hip. The street is mostly empty under the scorching Konoha sun, and the very air seems to waver in the heat of the day. The cleaners are only a block away, but it feels like miles. Her feet already blister in her pretty little shoes. Naruto can't wait until night, when the red lanterns light up the street and the foggy air and the whole sky turns crimson, when the older sisters go to work and she goes to sleep. The cleaner is dozing behind the desk, eyes closed. The only sign that he is awake is his hand, which fans his face lethargically with a rice paper fan. Naruto puts the basket on the ground and turns the handle. Holding the door open with her foot, she bends down to pick up the basket and walks in, staggering. The bell attached to the door tinkles, and the man wakes up. He startles for a moment, looking out over Naruto's head, but his sight shifts downward and he sees her. You'll be Velvet's girl, right? Naruto nods affirmation, and he hums. What's your name? Oh, you can put the basket right on the floor, darling. Rutoshi-chan, right? Naruto nods again. In the Velvet House, where even names are secret, she goes by a fake name. It is close to her real name, because all the girls started calling her nicknames for her real name before they got together and formally made up a stage name for her. Naruto drops the basket to the floor. The man is still fanning himself, looking dazed, so Naruto prompts, "Regular clean, please." He looks up, eases out of his chair, and walks over. "It's staying hot," he mutters, ruffling through the bed sheets. "A right DMN hot day. I'll be having it done in a jiffy. You want to stay or pick it up in, say, 15 minutes? He dumps them from Naruto's basket to one of his own. "I'm going to get coffee for Siki-san," Naruto says, just like Mei taught her, using going to instead of have to sound happy and not lazy, and adding a respectful honorific even though things like politeness don't go far at the house, unless it's a persona. "You're a right good girl," the man says. "If only my daughter was like you." He frowns after saying it, as if suddenly the thought of his daughter working in a res disturbs him. But it passes and he is smiling again because, then again, in the red light district the Velvet House is a very respectable establishment indeed. He ruffles the sheets again, and then nudges Naruto's basket toward her. "I'll just be charging the pay to Velvet. You're right, regular customers, anyhow. The boss shouldn't mind." Naruto nods again. She usually comes around to collect every month or so. Aya-san is usually manning the desk when Naruto comes, though some days it's this man, who is altogether forgetful and not very talkative. She stands there for another awkward moment before he shakes himself and waves a hand at her. "Run along now, you got coffee to fetch for that nice lady." Naruto turns on her heel and walks out of the shop just like Siki taught her, quietly, on the ball of her feet, ready to start running at any moment. And as soon as she is out the door, she is sprinting toward the cool air of the coffee shop, skirts gathered in hands, hair flying askew toward the sky. An hour later and 2 round trips from the coffee shop to the house to the cleaner and back to the house again, Naruto collapses on Mei's bed. She loves Mei's bed. The girls have raised beds, with plump mattresses and curtains and velvet spreads, but Naruto and the other live-in helpers have normal futons, which are not nearly as soft or luxurious. Mei laughs softly, looking up from her tea. "All done, Ruto-chan." "Yeah," Naruto grunts. "Mind your speaking." Mei scolds softly. Naruto looks up and realizes that Mei is already in house mode. Her face is done, her clothes are the shiny, gaudy house clothing, and she is drinking tea. Most of the girls prefer coffee, but the Velvet House insists on tea when the guests come, because it's more elegant. "Yes, I am finished," Naruto repeats in a mockingly dainty voice. Mei sighs a little, but Naruto knows she isn't angry. Or even if she is, she won't show it now, not with her house face on. When Mei just continues sipping delicately at her tea, Naruto turns her head back up to stare at the intricate details of Mei's bed curtains. When Mei speaks again, her voice is soft and affectionate, and it hits harder than anger would have. "You know, a mask will save your life someday. And until then, you'll have to watch carefully to see what other people do so that when the time comes, you have the right mask for the saving." Sometimes, Naruto is hit by how, even though it's annoying and painful and a lot of work, everything Mei and Siki and some of the other girls teach her is taught out of love. She sits up, even though her back aches, and manages a soft smile. She folds her legs under her bottom and rests her hands gently on her lap. "Yes, Mei-san. I understand perfectly," Naruto says in the capital accent she took great pains to learn. Mei smiles and puts down her teacup. She pushes back the chair without a noise and walks over soundlessly to where Naruto is. "Better," she acknowledges. "How old are you now, Ruto-chan?" "I will be 10 years old next Thursday," Naruto replies promptly, drawing up a random date and building a face and a voice and a persona as she speaks, just like Mei has been teaching her. She selects the noble's daughter, with the capital accent and the composed face, which she and Mei have been perfecting for the past month. Look me in the eyes, Ruto-chan. Don't twist your hands like that. Remember, you're not lying. You're never lying. You are just telling them somebody else's truth. Mei sighs. Don't you remember who you are? You are not Rutoshi of the house. You are not the girl you were. You are a noble's daughter, and you are talking to a woman who is beneath you in social class. Now, again, when is your birthday, dear? Naruto bites her lip and settles her hands. She looks up and smiles a smile like she doesn't want to be smiling. July 22nd, she says into Mei's eyes. Good, Mei says, and sits down on the bed beside Naruto. Remember how that felt. She waits for Naruto's nod before she continues. Today, you're a bit late. We've only got half an hour, and Siki-chan needs to sleep. So today's not a lesson per se, but rather a gift. A gift? Naruto echoes. Minuts. I am going to give you something that might someday save your life. Naruto waits for Mei to go on, but she doesn't. What is it? She asks dutifully. Mei smiles. I'll show you, she says, and they walk over to her window. Mei leans over the window, reaches under the ledge, and draws out a little bag. These are seeds of the in tree, and they grow in soil or on chakra. One day, when your BLD rises with the moon, you will use this. If not for this plant, no woman would be able to become a ninja. Our bleeding is just too disadvantageous, in terms of scent and the cramps it gives us, though it's different for every woman. So it's like a medicine? Naruto asks. Like a miracle medicine, Mei asserts, watch. She tips the bag into her hand, a couple of little seeds fall out, and she returns all but one to the bag. Placing the seed at the center of her palm, she concentrates chakra into the seed, so much that her chakra becomes visible wisps of blue life energy, that Naruto can feel the chakra without even closing her eyes and trying, that the seed grows visibly hot in her hand. The seed seems to expand slightly, and then it cracks along the side. A little green shoot peeps out of it, growing at an unnatural speed. Pale white blossoms from the opposite side, becoming tangled roots, and the shell cracks away. Wrapped with chakra, the green shoot branches off into 3 more, which thin out as they get longer and eventually end in a little bud. As Naruto watches, the palm-size, leafless tree becomes greener, and then browner. When they are a shade of brown as dark as chocolate, Mei cuts off her chakra flow and the glow fades from the hardened plant. They grow so fast because chakra, as life energy, stimulates their growth. Mei explains. She hands the dried and dead plant to Naruto. They also die faster. Chakra is a boon and a curse. Naruto holds the tree. Does this mean you could make a normal tree grow and die this fast too? Mei frowns. Theoretically, it would take more chakra than most people have. The in tree is a miniature tree and has a lifespan of about 9 months. It produces 3 seeds. Go ahead and peel them out. Naruto fumbles a little, and then digs her nails into the pod at the end of one of the 3 branches, managing to pry away the crackled skin from the seed, which is a curious silver color. A normal tree can live for centuries, and you'd have to feed a ridiculous amount of chakra into it. Some men with huge chakra reserves do feed a little chakra into a tree every day for all its life, which ends up giving it special properties. Does this have special properties, then? Naruto asks. The pod breaks off from the stem in her hand and she struggles to scrape away the little bits of bark left around the seed. The original dirt-grown in tree only lightens the monthly BLD chakra-fed in tree seeds stop the BLD and prevent a child from growing inside you. Or at least that's what my mother told me, Mei says, shrugging. You'll have to eat 1 seed every month, but don't eat it until after your first BLD, or you might hinder the development of your body. Naruto peels the 2nd seed. So, if you put chakra into a person, would that make them grow faster and die? Mei hesitates. Well, if your chakra type was exactly the same, I suppose so. It would be really hard to insert chakra into a person. We can do it with trees and plants because they have neutral natural chakra. Clans like the Hyuga spend their whole lives mastering the technique of inserting their chakra into other systems, which stops chakra flow and could theoretically kill, and they can only do it because they can see tenketsu, the pores that chakra enters and exits from. Naruto is caught up in a memory of 2 white-eyed, dark-haired girls, a quiet but intense Tomo, and the rambunctious shuka. But it passes just as quickly as it comes. After all this time, even the thought of Nanoko no longer makes her cry. Medics have techniques to switch their chakra to natural chakra so they can heal people, Mei adds. You'll probably end up learning some, because they expect all girls to become infiltrators, wares, or medics. But, Ruto-chan, listen to me. You're worth more than what they say. She doesn't want me to stay here, Naruto remembers. She frowns, slightly. Mei must see the furrow in her brow, because she keeps talking. You know, I was a kunoichi before. And then, at one point, I decided being aware was better than being aware who also murdered. There's no rest in the world of ninjas, and the pay is bad for the price of your soul. The house, at least, holds no illusions about what it is. Shinobi call themselves noble, but they are just glorified killers. I don't want to be a ninja, Naruto admits quietly. She looks up, thinking that Mei, who always rants about ninja, will agree with her. But Mei's tranquil house mask seems to shatter. Then what do you want to be? She asks, in her cold, angry voice. Do you want to stay here until you turn a legal age and let Mother Tessa sell your virginity to the highest bidder? Do you know the reason why you're wearing finer cotton right now is so, as you go around, you're displaying yourself to the patrons? Do you intend to stay in a res all your life? Do you want to be aware? But you said kunoichi are murderers and wares. Naruto cries. Isn't that even worse, Mei-san? Mei stares at her for a moment. Do you really think I would tell you this if I thought you couldn't be better? The strong have no such limits. They don't need to kill or sell their bodies, and you, my dear, are nothing if not strong. She bends down so they are at eye level. Ruto-chan, you are already more talented than I ever was. You have the chakra, you have the strength, you have the control. You're smart and skilled, but if I didn't know better, I'd swear you were a coward. Naruto swallows. Are you telling me to leave? She asks, and her voice is small. Mei's face softens, her eyes crinkled again, and her cherry-red lips tilt up in a semblance of a smile. I'm telling you there's a whole world out there, and nothing stopping you from going out and conquering it. I'm telling you because I love you. Mei straightens back up and tugs on her skirt to smooth it. And besides, she winks, I don't trust those stupid men to protect me, yeah. For some reason, Naruto laughs. And then they're both laughing. And Naruto swears to herself that she will become a wonderful kunoichi? No, the best ninja that ever lived, if only for Mei. For Mei and Siki and Nanoko, she will conquer the world and hold it safe in her hands. Someday. Sarutobi sighs as he turns to the thin stack of files. He never thought there would be a day he'd wish for more paperwork, but here he is, wishing. When Naruto ran from Minai, and Minai, thinking that the ANBU guards would take care of it, didn't chase after her, Sarutobi was at his desk filing paperwork and Ibiki was holding a meeting with the guards. In the confused aftermath, during which he sent out innumerable tracking ninja and forced many of his subordinates to work overtime, Sarutobi even brought in a young genjutsu umsis, some chunin named Yuhi Kurinai, who had felt Naruto's chakra before, to use the all-seeing ball. The papers accumulate every week from the lower administrative offices. A year after Naruto was kidnapped, Sarutobi carefully vetted 2 paper pushers to sort the outside intelligence into files that reported things to do with Naruto, files of international importance, and regular reports. Since a third party, most likely Shinobi from Kumo, snatched Naruto away after she ran from Minai, Konoha sent out a massive wave of trackers to try to find her. And in the year after that, an overwhelming flood of infiltrators. Sarutobi sent out a team of ANBU to recall Jiraiya from his stupid personal interest trip, which had gone on far too long, and personally oversaw changes to gate security. 2 years of improving security and even more infiltrators, and Konoha has perhaps the most extensive spy network anywhere, with the best information and the most secure borders. Konoha has the best spy system, the best customs, and the best information. Konoha is even better and stronger in the intelligence department than she was before the Kyuubi attack. But Konoha does not have her Jinchuriki anymore. Fighting the urge to start cursing viciously and therefore become the topic of another ANBU poll entitled, When is the old man going to throw a fit, go mad and go to war? Because yes, he does know about that poll. Sarutobi shifts through the papers, sees nothing of importance, and sighs again. Where in the wide world, where in all of the elemental nations can Naruto be? Naruto wakes up at 6 o'clock, after a solid 9 hours of sleep. It is a Thursday, and Wednesday the least busy day of the week. On the weekends, she's often up until after midnight. She washes her face, visits the bathroom, and begins her morning run in the house. There are 17 rooms of laundry and she lugs it all, room by room, down to the first floor, where the baskets are. 17 rooms make 8 baskets and 1 extra, which she divides among the rest, deciding that carrying more per lap is better than running an extra. She runs the baskets down to the launders. The store isn't open yet, but they leave a small room open where there are lockable cages for customers to store washing items. Aya once said the cages were installed after she realized that nobody wanted to run laundry down in the heat after the sun rose. Naruto selects the biggest cage and dumps everything in there. When she returns for her 6th basket, she finds Siki waiting for her at the door. "Siki-san?" Naruto questions. It's early yet, and Siki has dark shadows under her eyes. Naruto knows she had 3 customers yesterday, an unexpected early one, a traveler by the looks of it, and the customary 2 late Wednesday clients, a merchant who always brings gifts and a married businessman who always declares he will not return again but returns nevertheless. Siki pulls away from the door frame. "Come up with me," she says. "May and I have to talk to you." "I'm almost done with the baskets," Naruto says. "I'll be up in a moment." "It's important. I'll have the receptionist run the laundry." Naruto frowns and Siki adds, "She scheduled the extra for me. She won't refuse me this. Not if she knows what's good for her job. Anyway, this is more important than laundry." Naruto hesitates, but Siki isn't one to exaggerate. Mei stretches the truth sometimes, to get people's attention, but Siki's always frank. So she climbs the stairs, her thighs burning, and follows Siki to Mei's room. As soon as they're in, Mei closes the door. And then locks it, even though the locks are only supposed to be used if the customer wishes so. Immediately, Mei starts talking. "Yesterday, Shindu-san told me that matron's holding a velvet auction." At Naruto's questioning face, she elaborates, "They're not strictly legal. The house isn't strictly legal by Konoha law, but they tolerate us because we're better than black market woman selling. But the velvet auctions are almost like the black market trades. They run high in price, and to discourage the velvet girls from protesting it, we're not told until after we're sold." Naruto feels a sinking in her stomach. "What does this have to do with me?" She manages to choke out. "You're being sold," Siki says bluntly. "Siki!" Mei snaps. "It's the truth. My second client told me, and he's not one to lie, no matter how disgusting of a human being he is. I even confirmed it with the third." Siki says, "And we all knew it would happen sometime." "I'm underage," Naruto says. I don't want." "Nobody ever wants to be aware," Siki snaps. "Do you think that while little boys go around saying they want to be ninja, little girls go around saying they want to be worse?" She closes her eyes. "Nobody with any options chooses this path. We all had options," Mei disagrees firmly. "We just all decided this was the least painful, the most money, the most comfort." "Naruto, we had this conversation just a couple weeks ago. You and I, all of us really, we knew from the start that you were meant for better things than the Velvet House. Now that Mother Tessa's trying to sell you to the highest bidder and the price is running high, it's going to be harder to get away. She'll probably send people out after you, and she's got muscle in the red district, but once you get over into the right part of town she can't get at you." "You're telling me to leave?" Naruto stutters. She tries not to think about Mother Tessa selling her, or what price she's already at. "We're telling you to escape," Siki says. "And we're going to help you get away and stay alive." She stops pacing the floor and sits wearily on the edge of the bed. "Stay alive," Naruto echoes. Her throat aches with unsaid things. Words like, "It's too soon," and "I'm happy here." "Well, the world of ninja is a cutthroat one," Mei smiles. "But you'll do just fine. We've been teaching you all this time after all." Mei's voice softens when she glances at Naruto. Don't worry, child. I know we've told you awful things about kunoichi and the ninja world, but you'll do just fine. You're meant for greater things. Siki snorts. You're a romantic at heart, Mei-chun, she says. Ruto-chun, who do you think you are? What do you mean? Naruto asks, her voice small. Do you remember your name, Naruto? Mei asks deliberately. You're not Rutoshi of the house. You are a little girl with tremendous capability and you are never, ever going to end up where we are. She is almost yelling by the end of it, so takes a couple heavy breaths to calm herself. In a softer voice, Mei continues, don't you remember what you said? You're going to be a ninja and protect us, right? There is something pleading in her eyes, and Mei never pleads, and of course, they're right, so Naruto just nods. Tell me what I should do, she says, like they're just planning another prank on Mother Tessa or that stuck-up Nana. And Mei smiles and Siki smirks like it's just the same. And Naruto can almost believe that everything is going to be okay. The plan involves disguising the marks on her face with makeup instead of chakra and cutting off Naruto's appealing long hair, which, according to Siki, is worse than worthless in any case. If you're not planning on being aware, she says snidely, then long hair is suicidal. And then she picked up the scissors and started cutting. The plan also involves turning Naruto into a boy. The gender ratio of acceptance is 2 boys for every girl, so you're more likely to get in as a boy, Mei says. That's how they ration out the teams too. If there are 6 genin-worthy boys and 4 genin-worthy girls, 1 girl will be dropped to make 3 teams of so-called perfect gender balance. All the teams are 2 boys and 1 girl, and everybody knows they plan it. They should just come out and say it instead of pretend like it's a coincidence every year. Mei is definitely a little bitter and Siki is definitely a little angry still at the shinobi world, but in the end, they are still pushing Naruto back into it. But in the short days that follow, in the time frame before Saturday, Naruto has little time to think about it. She has lessons on how boys act, though she still has a pretty good idea from living as one for so long, a horrendous new wardrobe consisting of baggy clothing and ugly colors, and classes on how idiots act. Never show your true potential until it's worth it. It's suicidal, Siki said, along with a long list of other things that were sure to be suicidal and that Naruto must never do. And that Friday evening, Siki and Mei both call in sick days, and if anybody thinks it's suspicious, they don't say anything. That last night, they sleep ensconced in lavender-scented blankets and the warmth of almost family. Almost family that will soon be nothing but bonds broken in hopes of new and better ones. Some days, Minai still curses the little Jinchuriki that ran away. She'd had a nice, cushy job as administrative liaison between the academy and the formal governing offices, but after the incident with the little girl, she was demoted to a different kind of administrator. The front desk receptionist variety. It's not like I meant for the stupid girl to run away, she thinks for the 4th time this morning, cursing at another paper cut. She reinforces the wound with her chakra and watches it start to heal up slowly. I just thought that her ANBU guards would cover it, and there would be no need for me to disrupt class. But no, the ANBU guards were in a conference with Ibiki and apparently, I was supposed to just know that it would turn into a dire situation. Minai studies the stack of sheets on her desk and takes out the top 10 or so packets, turning to a cabinet and pulling out the corresponding folder. Most little girls would run to cry at a park, or go back home, but our special little Jinchuriki just disappears. And more than 2 years of searching later, years of extensively checking every person that passed in or out of the gates, years of questioning and cross-questioning every ninja who could have come into contact with the girl, even the civilians, at one point years of scouring the elemental nations, years later, she was still missing. The Hokage's wrath had borne down on the hapless Anbu guard and Minai herself, and many fruitless excursions were made into Kumo, into that RTD Nanoko's mind, into every other elemental nation, but nothing was found. Nothing. She stamps another paper with the official academy stamp, signs her name in the stamp signature line, and puts it in another growing pile. The first Hokage had reputedly handled all paperwork himself, but the nation was small then. Measures had been added, and now papers must go through 3 lines of paper pushers, and another line just to check that all papers had been stamped thrice, and if there is any little discrepancy, anything of great or slight importance, the Hokage will find it on his desk. And Minai, for one, knows better than to PSS off the grandfatherly old man. The door tinkles and she looks up, a polite greeting already on her lips just in case it's a clan member checking up on a student, when she sees the figure in the doorway. The words on her lips die. "Hey," the little boy says exuberantly. "I'm here to be a ninja." But that's not the important part. The important part is that the boy looks like Uzumaki Naruto, whom Minai admittedly did not know was a girl until she read the DMN girl's profile, and she has been missing for 2 years, and this might get her promoted again, just maybe. "Are you okay, miss?" the little brat asks, and Minai realizes she is standing. She runs a hand down her skirt, smoothing the fabric out, and forces a smile on her lips. But before she can get a word out, the brat is off again. "I'm Shindu Toshiro, but everybody calls me Shiro, and my father," a significant glance here, "and I recently moved here, and Konoha is famous for having awesome ninja, so I want to be a ninja, okay." He puts a hand on his hip and stares up at her, with an expression so entitled and snobby Minai blinks twice. This is not Uzumaki Naruto. The little Jinchuriki Minai remembers was meek and didn't talk much and fled from confrontation. She didn't have challenging eyes like these, or a voice with such a rich, textured accent, the kind Minai always heard from the mouths of foreign ambassadors or some of the very rich civilian kids. "There are procedures to be followed," she says, settling back into her chair. Now that she looks closely at his face, he doesn't look much like Uzumaki Naruto. He doesn't have those distinct whiskers, for one, though there is a dim scar on his right cheek. "I don't know who your father is, but he can't just—" The smile, which had slowly been disappearing from the boy's Sendo lips, slides back in. "I don't plan to become a ninja with that man's money," he says, his grin lopsided and equally bitter and victorious. "I'm fully confident in my abilities as a student." Minai sighs. "I'm sorry, but I don't think you know what you're asking for. Is there an advancement test for talented students? A scholarship acceptance program, maybe?" His smile is dangerous. Minai can think of the exact section of the Academy Charter that talks about placement for late but talented or gifted students, and a scholarship program encompassing even housing and meals, if needed. She looks at him again, at his posture, which screams defiance, and then closer, at his red-rimmed eyes, at the tiredness in his face. Minai wants to hate him, she really does. She wants to hate him for not being Uzumaki Naruto, for making her morning more difficult, and for his expression, which says that he won't give up, not like she has. But she finds that she can't. "All right," she says and gets up again, stretching out her calves. "Come with me." Irika doesn't know what Minai wants with him during his preparatory PRD, but he doesn't like it already. The kids are out for their lunch and playground time, with other administrators watching over them, and this hour and a half is the only time he has to eat and work on these papers. A long time ago, Irika naively believed that homework would stop after he got out of school, and that teachers assigned it to give students grief. Now he believes that teachers are all secretly masochistic. But even though Minai was demoted a couple years ago after the fiasco with the Jinchuriki, she's still in a higher position than him and he still has to listen to her. So Irika trudges out of the door toward the 3rd Academy training field, where she asked him to meet her. As he nears it, he is surprised to hear Minai's voice, animated like it hasn't been for years. The blonde is known around campus for being rather aloof, and with some curiosity Irika picks up his pace and directs some chakra to his ears. "So, how have I done?" a distinctly young voice asks. "You've been doing okay so far," Minai's voice says. "But don't get arrogant, brat. You've only managed to pass the book learning so far. Combat is what makes a ninja. That's why you're stuck as a teacher and not actually doing anything, huh? Why, you little—" Irika rounds the corner and is treated to the sight of the normally composed blonde giving a little sunshine-headed boy a noogie. The boy yelps and flails a little comically, and she laughs. "Say that again." "Uncle." Minai tugs his hair again for good measure and he yelps, "Sensei, save me." "What?" Irika stares at the boy, startled. Minai didn't notice him yet, he knows, and he doesn't think the boy saw him coming in. He watches the boy closely as Minai lets him go and dusts herself off, still smiling. Irika-sensei, Minai says, her voice still alive. This is Shindu Toshiro. Shindu-kun, this is Irika-sensei. He'll be testing you on the other aspects of ninja learning. She nods at Irika and Irika sighs internally. So some kid with connections wants to get in before the start of the new school year, even though it's only 4 months away. Why can't he wait until the school year, when the test is much easier and acceptance rate higher? Irika doesn't want to go through the diplomatic nightmare of nicely telling a rich family that the kid is just not suited to being a ninja, and no, the money won't help. Irika-sensei. Shindu asks, his voice young. I'm Shindu Toshiro, future ninja. He sticks out a hand and Irika shakes it bemusedly. Yes, he stammers and looks over at Minai. She's settled down by a tree, looking as if she has nothing else to do and is fully prepared to see this testing through, even though she's usually complaining about paperwork. Well, then, shall we start with chakra molding and jutsu? He asks Shindu, turning to face the boy. What do you want me to do? Straightforward, Irika thinks, I don't want to deal with this fallout. But the kid looks like he can take it pretty well, maybe if he realizes himself that he can't be a ninja. Do you know how to mold chakra? Irika asks, already formulating an explanation in his head. Do I know how to mold chakra? Naruto nearly scoffs, but doesn't say a word. The teacher's eyes wander, like his attention is elsewhere. Hold out your hand. Now close your eyes and imagine all the color in the world gathering in a ball in your hand. All the colors in the world. Not stopping to give the teacher a reply, Naruto holds out her hand and pulls chakra into it. She's so used to the feeling of everything in her rising that she doesn't have to close her eyes to feel it anymore, just like she's used to the sudden clarity in the colors around her, the acuteness of the chakra in the air around her, the feeling of the world being made clear. With Siki and Nanoko, she trained hard to keep the sense of color, so even now she can close her eyes and see Irika and Minai and the trees, ground and sky. She knows the shape of the ball in her hand, knows its diameter and its shape without looking. Naruto can stretch it into different shapes, into different things, shape it and tease it and change it to show her control, but she doesn't need such things. Siki taught her, the hard way, not to show anything unless she needs to, not even for the sake of proving that she's better, not even if she's angry or hurt. Bragging is a bad habit, she'd said more than once, and bad habits get you killed. Some moments, Naruto realizes that Siki and Mei were preparing her for being a ninja the whole time, that they never intended for her to stay with them. But she never dwells on the thought. Is that good enough? She demands, thoughts making her voice a little rough on the edges. She puts her hands on her hips and stares at him with hard eyes, hardened by the friends and the love and the girls and the velvet house. Hardened by what he made her remember. He stutters. No, that's perfect, he manages to say. They stand there in awkward, tense silence for a moment before he seems to remember how to continue. Now we'll test your taijutsu. That's physical combat. Naruto is not good at taijutsu. She went through some basic stances with Siki sometimes, but in the cramped and overly ornate rooms at the house, and with so much else to learn, taijutsu was a question they never saw fit to answer. But the man beckons, so she slides into a low stance, feeling the stretch in her thighs, and wonders how well she has to do on this. Though Siki said to show as little as possible, Naruto knows it is not an option to fail. It never was. She closes her eyes a moment to center herself, letting the world of color, the world of chakra, take over for a moment. It swells around her, leaning in, as if she is the center of the earth and everything, all the color, is just trying to become closer to her. Beauty blooms at the edges of her closed eyelids, making her breath come just a little bit easier. There is the man, and there is Minai, and the edge of the tree line, and further on are clumps that must be animals, students, sky. She shakes herself loose before she can get lost in the infinite world, forever onward. Whenever you're ready, the man says. I'm ready, she says. And then she leaps forward, swinging her right hand down in a diagonal slash and bringing her left foot up second later in a diagonal kick. Irika moves backward, out of the range of her attack, and aims a weak punch, which she bats out of the air, directing it away from her. He doesn't overextend, but falls back a little more, stabilizing his stance, his hand already fs&g in anticipation, so Naruto doesn't go after him. She feints left, and then dodges right and sweeps her leg at his. Her shin collides solidly with his, and she muffles a curse as her leg begins throbbing in pain. That was a hard hit, Iruka says, and though his voice has the faintest traces of laughter, the compliment seems to be genuine. Naruto smiles, though the throbbing, and collapses onto the dirt-packed ground. If you reinforce a hit like that with chakra, it should do more damage, he says. Then pauses. Do you know how to reinforce your body with chakra? Naruto does, but she doesn't know if this is something she should know. Am I supposed to? She hedges, hesitantly. Iruka laughs again. Your knowledge of chakra is certainly already past the level we expect for even a third-year student, and your taijutsu is alright. Minai-san, I assume his written tests were good. Minai nods affirmative. Well, with this much, you've certainly passed already. Unless you want to try to skip a grade, which I wouldn't recommend, you'll get free leave to the class that will be graduating next year. Do you have a guardian we can ask about your admission fees? Money. Naruto doesn't have any money. And her cover story doesn't qualify for financial aid. She shouldn't have picked a rich boy, but she thought that being a poor boy was a step closer to her real self and dangerous. I thought there was a scholarship, she blurts, finally. The library copy of the charter said so. Scholarship. Minai coughs from the shade under the tree. I thought, your father. My father has nothing to do with this, Naruto snaps, quite deliberately. She takes a deep breath, as if to calm herself, and repeats, more quietly, my father doesn't know anything about this. And I aim to keep it that way. I'm afraid that we can't accept you without the consent of your legal guardian, Iruka says quietly. He thinks I killed my mother, Naruto speaks over the end of his sentence. But it was all his fault that mom died. It was just a simple C-rank mission, but his enemies attacked her and she died. She remembers the pain on Nanoko's face as her first teacher talked about her parents, and tries to twist her expression into an imitation of it. But he's not my father and he's never been, and we are not a family, because he's already forgotten me and he's already forgotten mom, and if he really loved her, he would understand why I have to do this. He can't stop me, because he doesn't know the first thing about me and he's forgotten everything she was. Iruka grimaces and says, we still can't accept you. So Naruto brings out her last card. She reaches into her too baggy clothing, which rustle too much for comfort, and brings out the forged emancipation document, one of Siki's specialties. She thinks about Mei and Siki and how she'll never see them again, and whatever happened to Nanoko and why is she always alone, and tears well up in her eyes. Are you happy now? She asks, and it sounds choked. I'm not even a part of his family legally anymore. He doesn't care. He let me go. And Iruka takes it and barely glances at it. He stares at her and Minai comes up beside her and wraps her in her arms, which smell of ink and paper and dust. And Minai rocks her back and forth and murmurs soft, sweet words, but all Naruto can do is stand there, stone still, because this is the woman who hated her before, who was part of the organization that took Nanoko away. Finally, Iruka says something else. What was her name? Shut up, Iruka, Minai snaps. Look at Dash, whose name? Naruto asks quietly, under Minai's voice, from inside her paper arms. Your mother's name. She was a kunoichi, right? A Konoha kunoichi. Tell me her name, and we'll process the paperwork to let you into the academy. Naruto knows he can't stop her now, not with Minai and Siki's expertly forged document on her side, but she also knows that this will be her teacher, and she can't let him hate her, and what is a name, anyway? But at the same time, she doesn't know anything, she doesn't know any dead girls, she doesn't. Then, unbidden, comes the memory of the time she was crying, and Mei found her in the hall and wrapped her in lavender-scented silk, and they lay on the mattress and talked about the secret things that even the walls couldn't hear. About Mei faking her death, to get away from the death and the killing and the lies. Because Mei said that the weak have to do what they can to survive. And that's when Naruto knows she has gone too far to turn back. Because she looks up at Iruka's untrusting eyes and she says Mei's real name. Her name was Uminaka Misaki, she says, barely a whisper. And don't you forget it. It's a promise. To Nanoko and Mei and Siki, Because no matter what their past mistakes were or what country they were from or what name they went by, they had loved her and she had loved them. So Naruto promises, at least to herself, not to forget them, and not to forget the girl they had made her. Irika has never disliked a student so much. And he can't even fathom why. Maybe, he thinks, it is because Shindu had everything he did not have: a home, a father, a family left alive. Shindu had that, and he left it for some intangible dreams. But even when Irika thinks about that, there's no bitterness in his heart. Shindu's eyes are straightforward, and his smile is always tinged with weariness. Sometimes, even though Shindu has left for this intangible dream with more conviction that Irika ever hopes to have, sometimes, Shindu looks as if he is carrying all the weight of the world on his shoulders. No, maybe hate is too strong a word. But Irika can't stand Shindu for some reason. There is something uncomfortable, something that does not feel right. There is something that is wrong about the boy, and it puts him on edge. When he is teaching, Irika finds his eyes drawn to Shindu, who is all of a sudden not as completely brilliant as he seemed when Irika tested him. Not a genius, as he expected, but an ordinary, hard-working boy. When the children are out playing and Shindu is somehow at the gravitational center of the students, smiling and bright and a sun in all respects, Irika feels perturbed. Later Irika remembers that the gravitational center of everything is supposed to be a deep, endless hole, which draws all things toward it, by which all worlds will inexorably fall. In all honesty, even before she befriended and came to know them, Naruto never thought that Hashina and Suki would become ninja. Sure, they were in the Ninja Academy, but it was widely known that the Ninja Academy is better in all aspects of education than the civilian one, and those that contest into it do. They were both flawed, too flawed to become killers. Hashina was much too impulsive, always procrastinating, and never wanted to sit down or stand up and learn something. Suki was so passive, though others called him kind, that he lacked even the drive to get angry with somebody who had hurt him for absolutely no reason. Naruto first encountered them while they were completing a punishment, moving at the pace of snails as they wiped down the academy's southernmost wall. She stopped and watched them, thoroughly amused by their actions. Brown-haired Suki moved lethargically, as if he was afraid of finishing the work, and red-headed Hashina was constantly breaking away from the wall to examine something that had caught her eye. "You're never going to finish at that pace," she said. And then, insanely, she picked up a rag, dipped it in the bucket, and began helping them. To be honest, Naruto finished most of the work herself, but ever since that first tentative contact, they developed into friends. So much so that now, after their inevitable failed final, Naruto approaches them. She sees the look on their faces, an identical look, copied and pasted like a spotless bunshin, one that speaks of resignation to something they all knew would happen all along. "Well, it was a good experience," Hashina says like an excuse, as Naruto approaches them. "Ninja schooling is much better than civilian anyway, and dirt cheap if you're under a certain income level to boot, so even though I was never going to be a ninja, it was a good choice." She smiles, but it looks sad and painful and angry at the same time. "Plus, if I passed and had to study under that Bats Hit Loco teacher, I'd go nuts myself." "No worries there," Naruto deadpans. "You're already crazy. Can't get much more than this." Hashina laughs, a short bark of just starting to heal laughter. "I dunno," Suki says, his voice lighter than his expression. "That teacher was either smoking something or belonged in a psychiatric ward." The teasing note is there and his eyes are less solemn, and Naruto is so glad for it she giggles. "He basically told us only the two people who managed to steal bells from him were going to pass, and then after the test he told us we were all supposed to work together to get it. Like, what the heck, man? Is this a ninja team or an unconditional support group? Why don't we just all sit in a circle and share feelings?" Naruto takes a step away from the heavily breathing, fuming Suki. "It's okay, Suki," she manages to squeak out. "I mean, you had plans besides becoming a ninja, right?" For a moment, Hashina stops laughing and Suki looks away to stare into space. Naruto knows immediately that she said something wrong, so she backtracks quickly. And there's always the core. They don't have Jounin-sensei assigned to them, but they rotate through a lot of teachers and might honestly be better learning. My parents won't fund the core. According to them, it's not being a real ninja anyway. They think I've wasted enough time already, and they barely allowed me to take the Genin team exam. Since I failed, it's time to man up and join the family business. Suki's tone is bitter. Funding reminds Naruto that she doesn't have anybody backing her. And Irika asked her to go talk to him about it. But Irika can wait, because Hashina is starting to look teary again and Suki is staring off into the distance and she feels like they're about to break. If only she had some people glue, so she could patch them both together. But Naruto doesn't have any tape meant for hearts and dreams, so she decides her arms will have to do. She crushes Suki in a hug, and Hashina joins it not much later. None of them cry. It feels wrong, like grieving for something that had died long ago. And Naruto knows it's cruel, because though Suki and Hashina never expected to be ninja, never really held the dream in their hands, somewhere along the way the dream pulled them into its hands, and now the hopeless hope is crushing them. None of them cry, though not for lack of feeling. No, not a single tear comes out, no matter how much Naruto wants one to. It's a little later before Naruto remembers Irika and the very serious funding issue. And then she wishes she didn't, because just thinking about money makes her head start to ache. Shinda-kun, Irika says, his voice very serious, the wrinkles around his eyes grave but kind. The academy has some rules, and while Minai-san and I have waived them for you for a little while, we can't allow you to freeload off of the funding for the academy anymore. You've been living in the dorms for the scholarship students and the academy has been footing your food funds, but we can't do that anymore. This means that you're going to have to find a place to live, get your estranged family in on the game plan, or somehow get into the top slot of your class for scholarships. Naruto stares at him blankly. While she knows it can't go on for much longer, it still hurts a little. Even though she knows they have perfectly legitimate reasons and the academy is used to receiving the scholarship fund for use on other things, since a clan-sponsored child usually takes the top spot, even though intellectually she knows all these things, it still feels like betrayal. She nods at him and manages to say, "Can I have a bit of time to think about it?" before unceremoniously leaving her seat and running out the door. The halls are just about deserted, but her mind is so full. Never show your true potential until it's worth it. It's suicidal, Siki says. Top slot of your class, Irika booms over her voice. Nanoko turning to her with wide eyes, almost shouting, "We can lead the ninja world." And her own voice, telling herself that for Mei and Siki and Nanoko, she will conquer the world and hold it safe in her hands. And then there's Nanoko's voice again, so loud and real that for a second Naruto is fooled. She doesn't know what Nanoko's voice is saying, but just the sound of it brings her moving feet to a stop, her pounding heart to a murmur. Naruto is fooled, and she stops by the door even though it's impossible and for some reason somebody has set up a genjutsu there. Because Nanoko is in the classroom. Nanoko is in the classroom, in the academy, right in front of her, almost as if she never left. It's not until Nanoko looks up with a puzzled expression that Naruto realizes she is halfway across the room. She almost throws herself at her very first teacher with abandon, almost starts crying, almost talks before her mind stops her and warns her that something is very wrong. Nanoko smiles, but it's a puzzled smile. And it's a slow, painful, twitchy smile. To Naruto, it feels like it takes hours for Nanoko's cheeks to bunch up, for the corners of her lips to tilt skyward. When she talks, it is a stuttered question. Hello. Naruto backs away, stumbling over the suddenly solid air, over her suddenly senseless feet, grasping at words that just aren't there. She fumbles and then something spills out of her mouth. "Do you recognize me?" And the confused look Nanoko gets drags her heart down, down, down. Sudden adrenaline courses through suddenly cold veins. She brings her hands up but her fingers do not cooperate and fumble the sign, but her chakra knows anyway and she sends out a short, compressed chakra burst, just like she's practiced. The illusion doesn't break. The nightmare is still there. Nanoko-sensei doesn't recognize her. And there's something else, something deeper wrong about Nanoko's slackened face and her dull gray eyes and the slant of her mouth. As Naruto watches, Nanoko's face convulses again before settling into a painfully happy expression. "Why you are Shinda-kun, right?" Nanoko says, stumbling, her voice coming out in hesitant gasps. Naruto barely has the presence of mind to spit out a quick reply. Then her feet carry her away, out of the classroom, away. Far from here. Again she is running. There's a buzzing in her head, and a fire in her lungs, and a pain somewhere not in her body. There is Nanoko and Irika and money and death and Siki and Mei all in her head, jumbled in a cataclysmic mess, too many thoughts for her to think. There's too many thoughts. And Naruto can't think. She pauses, breathing at the door of the apartment that isn't really hers. She pauses and thinks about what Siki said. Never show your true potential. She pauses and thinks about Nanoko, about how the administration hates her, and by the great sage it's all her fault that Nanoko, who was so appealing and wonderful and alive, became like this. She cries for her, and for Siki and Mei and everything else, and it hurts even more because none of them are there to wrap an arm around her and whisper words she can't hear into her too short hair. Being alone hurts too much, so Naruto closes her eyes, reaches out, and feels the whole world, blue and green in color, alive all around her, just like Nanoko taught her. It reminds her that she is not alone. It reminds her of what is appealing. She feels the answer. If she can't show her true potential, then she'll just have to manage to stay a step ahead. A whole step ahead. Several dozen more. Somehow, she'll just have to stick at the top slot in her class, outperform, and still have something left over. And if Nanoko is broken somehow, she'll just have to find a way to fix her, and protect her, and make sure nothing like that ever happens to anybody she loves ever again. Naruto sighs and opens her door. It's her apartment, and it will stay that way. She will keep her word. The first time Irika has something tangible, something beyond a feeling, it is ironically a success. Shindo Toshiro is a shooting star, and his meteoritic rise to the top starts precisely after Irika talks to him about the scholarship position. Somehow, his next test scores are all perfect, with one question missed on one of the tests, but on that he earned the extra credit. Somehow, he is suddenly much better in the classroom spars. Somehow, his chakra control improves to the point where Irika can't believe it's the same boy who was only mediocre a week ago. Even Minai comments on how, it's lucky Toshiro-kun picked himself up and rose to his true potential before time ran out. There is something wrong with the picture, but for the life of him Irika can't understand. Shindo Toshiro is still the center of the classroom, only now he's a smart center and even motivating previously unmotivated friends to work hard. He's a perfect student, a teacher's pet, a kind of charismatic leader that Irika had always wished for in the classroom. He is helpful, kind, and diligent beyond the likes of even Uchiha Sasuke. But why the sudden change? Irika knows that Shindo Toshiro is hiding something, but he cannot fathom why. Irika knows he was right all along, that uneasy feeling, but he still does not understand. So Irika finds himself watching Shindo Toshiro more, and the more he sees, the more uneasy he is. Something is wrong. Something is strange. There is something about Shindo Toshiro that is just off. Something even beyond the test scores, which Irika finds himself proud of and wanting to explain away. There is something in his movements, something in his face, something in his smile. It eats at him, that something. It kills him, that something. Sakura knows it is love. She knows it like she knows everything that is true. She knows it better than she knows her textbooks, better than she knows her equations. Haruno Sakura knows it's love, because her heart tells her so and the stars tell her so and his smile tells her so, and if this isn't love she doesn't even need to know what love is because this is wonderful and happy and buoyant and she could just float away on wings made of her own lighter-than-air feelings. The grass is green, the sky is blue, and she is in love with Shindo Toshiro. And Ino is too. Sakura has always been what Ino is, ever since Ino saved her, not that she will ever admit it. And just once, just in love, she wants to be better than Ino. She wants to show Ino that she doesn't need that help anymore, that Haruno Sakura can stand on her own 2 feet, that she's not lesser, she's not the pitiable girl who needed help anymore. Besides, Shindo Toshiro-kun, she giggles in her own mind, Toshiro-kun, Shiro-kun. Shindo Sakura. Makes it so easy to love him. He's nice, diligent and smart, and a good sport about everything. He's friends with just about everybody in the class, even Uchiha Sasuke, or at least Sasuke-kun doesn't mind him. Everybody knows Sasuke-kun is like the second hottest. Maybe even first, but he's way colder than Shiro-kun. Not that Sakura really knows why she calls them hot. Isn't it a temperature? But Ino does, and so she does too. She giggles again, this time aloud, and as the subject of her love walks in the door, she summons up all her courage in a blast and calls out before she can lose her nerve, "Hi," to Shiro-kun. She can't find it in her to call him Shiro-kun yet, though he said they could when he introduced himself eons ago. Ino titters beside her like she's an idiot for even trying, but she holds on to her smile still. And Toshiro hears her. He looks up and smiles, dazzling and cute, and it breathes confidence into her. "Hey, Sakura-chan," he says easily, and part of Sakura knows it's just because it's in his nature to be familiar and friendly and accepting, but the other part of her thinks it's a victory and lets out a victory cry. Some other part of her feels the acknowledgement in his however brief glance and smile, and that part just wants to laugh and scream and shout. She's buoyed up by warmth, by feelings she never knew she could feel. For once in her life, Haruno Sakura feels superior. Ever since she told Ino she was a rival, and an equal, Ino had grown more distant. It must be because she realized I'm stronger than her, Sakura thinks to herself, I don't need her anymore. I don't need her pity. I don't need her help. I don't need Ino, Shinaro. Some little bit of her, some misguided, dependent bit hurts, but it's healed over by the echo of Toshiro's words in her head and the image of the smile on his face. She replays it over and over in her head, and the warmth rises, bringing her up with it. Sakura falls in love with him all over again. The first time Naruto talks to Uchiha Sasuke, she's scared shitless. It's not of him. And it's not of anything really tangible. Honestly, Naruto knows she should not be afraid. It's like a new beginning, and it's okay if Nanoko doesn't remember her because she remembers Nanoko, and it's okay if Nanoko doesn't recognize her because she loves Nanoko, and Sasuke finds her right outside the disabled teacher's door, shaking like a leaf. When she sees him, she prepares herself for the questions. She scrambles for answers. Her heart pounds even more furiously in her throat, against her skin, trying to tear itself away from her fear. But he just stands there. And it's strangely familiar, so déjà vu that Naruto remembers the time when Yamanaka Ino told her about Sasuke's family and Sasuke overheard. He avoided even the sight of her for days, even though they'd been getting alongish as competitors for the top spot in the class listings posted every Monday on the school's bulletin. Of course, getting along with Sasuke constituted of not being glared out of the seat beside him. And finally she'd found him, confronted him, and just stood there before him. She didn't have any words, and she just wanted him to know that she wouldn't ask any questions, that he wouldn't have to tell her anything until he wanted to. As she watches his impassive face, searching his posture for something, anything, she finds herself relaxing. Sasuke is just there. Just there. No questions, no words, no nothing. Not confrontational, not judgmental. Just there. And she's not scared shitless anymore. She nods, briefly, trying to keep her composure when normally she would have started talking already. And it is ironically Uchiha Sasuke who says the first word that passes between them. He smirks a little, starts to walk away, and then, like an afterthought, tosses over his shoulder, "Dobe." For a few seconds Naruto scrambles through all her interactions with her only competitor for the scholarship position, trying to understand what the sudden insult could mean. Then she remembers that sometimes friends call each other names, and though she doesn't quite understand, she calls after him, "Team." She doesn't stay long enough to see his response, if he has one, because she opens the door and walks in to meet Nanoko for the very second time. Irika has a couple theories regarding Shindu Toshiro, and they're all so outlandish he doesn't like to think he's thought of them, just for his own self-esteem. One involves the late Yondaime, because of the curious sunshine color of Shindu's hair and the depth of his blue eyes and just the look of his smile, and he has to stop thinking about it or he'll start thinking his ridiculous theory is a truth. Another has to do with demons in disguise. One even has to do with poor old Nanoko-sensei, though he's sure it's just Shindu's nature to be nice, even to the mentally broken and senseless. When Irika starts thinking about spies undercover from IWA, he knows something must be done. Irika knows that he has to do something, but he isn't sure what until he finds Shindu wandering around the halls of the academy apartment complex after school hours one day. Many of the teachers also live in the building built for academy staff and scholarship recipients, as it's close to the school, cheap, and of a quality above a teacher's pay grade. Shindu looks up, his face a mask of embarrassed sheepishness. "I lost my key," he blurts quickly, and Irika is suddenly hit by how normal the boy's voice sounds. It used to have the rich texture of a politician's son or a noble's accent, but the formerly overwhelming texture has dulled to a slight exotic tint. Of course, he supposes to himself, children learn quickly. Children forget quickly. "We'll get you a duplicate one," Irika starts, then realizes what a perfect opportunity this is and rapidly switches gears. "Tomorrow. The academy is locked up at night, and I'm afraid we can't get at it until it opens in the morning." He is startled at how easily the lie slips out of his mouth, how thoughtlessly he includes the false reason. Irika doesn't expect it of himself. And Shindu apparently doesn't either, because he accepts the statement casually. "All right then," he says, "I guess I'll just go see if I can room with Minai-san." Immediately, Irika has the feeling of something wrong, something he can't place, that same nagging feeling that he always seems to get when he is around Shindu Toshiro. He thinks about it for a couple seconds. Minai, as everybody knows, moved back after her demotion because her salary couldn't keep up the high-end apartment she had near the merchant sector. But that's not the problem here. The problem, Irika belatedly realizes, is that Shindu is an adolescent male child and probably shouldn't be living with unrelated women. It's funny, and it nags at him, that funny feeling, it shouts and it screams and it's just at the edge of his mind. Because for some reason Irika has never thought of Shindu as a prepubescent boy. And he knows this is important, and he almost knows why, but his mind shies away from it as if it is something he doesn't want to know. Maybe it's his maturity, he tells himself, he's just not somebody you think of as prepubescent, he thinks, and leaves it at that. Still, the thought hovers at the edge of his mind, tipping on the verge of his tongue. "I'm not sure if that's appropriate," he says slowly instead of the thing on the tip of his tongue, and watches realization dawn on Shindu's face. It's funny, he thinks again, because Shindu didn't find it strange either. "Funny." Irika smiles and adds, "You can stay with me instead," though the words taste funny on his tongue. Shindu hesitates and he adds, "Hey, I'm not that bad." Neither of them laugh, so he continues awkwardly, "I'll treat you to some dinner first. Ichiraku sound good to you?" Only when they are seated in the stand with 4 steaming cups of ramen before them does Irika wonder why he is so desperate to find out more about this elusive but open boy. Just curiosity alone cannot open his wallet. There is something about him that is so remarkable, so reliable, so familiar that it calls to Irika. Again Irika thinks of the yondaime, but quickly pushes it out of his mind. No, it's not one of his wild theories, but something tangible about the boy's eyes, something in his face, something in the way he speaks that draws everybody inescapably toward him. Irika remembers mid-mouthful that gravity does not discriminate, and Shindu is the black hole center, and he is prone to falling as well. And if their conversation is a bit tilted, like a game of cat and mouse, it just makes it more fun. And if Shindu includes old man Ichiraku in the conversation as easily as if they were a trio of friends, and Ayam-chan later when she comes out, Irika does not look away from the gravity happening before his eyes. And if Shindu gulps down his 3 bowls of ramen and then wipes his mouth daintily, almost like and Irika's mind stutters again, he evades the answer there almost willingly. When they are done and back in the apartment complex only 3 blocks away, Shindu pauses in his story about the rat in Nanoko-sensei's classroom and how he valiantly captured it with 2 pieces of chalk and a poster off the wall, and Irika makes a mistake. Irika makes a mistake because he asks his first real question of the night, and it slips out of his mouth before he can stop it. "How do you know Nanoko-sensei, Shindu-kun? Why did you go see her?" The look on Shindu's face transforms him. Irika turns away and quickly unlocks and opens his door, trying not to notice how his hands are suddenly trembling. He doesn't understand, or rather, he understands all too well and he doesn't want to. He walks in and turns on the lights and says quietly to his neat room, "Come on in." He's startled by his own words, because the words that he thought would fill his mouth were more along the lines of "never mind" or "sorry, you don't have to answer that." He is startled and he can't find a way to take it back. Shindu brushes past him, moving quickly, and this uncharacteristic rudeness is disconcerting to Irika for a second. The boy darts to the screen door opening to the balcony and opens it. He turns his head back and calls, "Thanks for the meal, Irika-sensei. I can get back to my room from here." Irika recognizes the escape, and he's glad for it. He's glad for Shindu's escape from his own mistake. He's glad for the smile on the boy's face. It's a normal smile, the toothy, scrunched-up eyes, too wide grin that looks somehow charming on his face. The one that shines at the center of the classroom, daily. And all of a sudden Irika is not glad, because he never realized how fake it looked. How practiced. Then Shindu is jumping across the railing of the small balcony and Irika doesn't move to stop him, doesn't even call out to be careful, bound in place by a smile and the look of betrayal on Shindu's too young face. Yamanaka Inoichi is startled when his lovely daughter Ino comes to demand that he teaches her the clan techniques. Rather, startled is a pithy word for it. What Inoichi feels when he looks into her determined cyan eyes, no boring color like blue, but a appealing cyan, just like her mother, is a grand concoction of little things. There is a little pride and a little happiness and a little brightness, but also a little worry and a little fear and a whole lot of things he can't even bring words to. But Inoichi was not the head of intelligence for no reason, so he shoves all the feelings aside and smiles. Is there any reason why? And Ino, who is so much like her mother because both of them love to brag, though in front of them Inoichi calls it having pride, jumps on the opportunity to explain. "Well, Shirokuen asked me," she begins, and despite the fact that Inoichi always tries to hear his girls out completely when they talk lest he face their wrath, he is so surprised that he preemptively interrupts her. "Shirokuen." She pouts but does not yell at him for the interruption, which to Inoichi is the first red flag. "Yeah, that's Shindu Toshiro to you." "He's my friend," she says, adding unabashedly, "and my future husband." Feeling more than just a little animosity towards this Shirokuen already, Inoichi says, "I thought you liked Sasuke-kun." The Uchiha, at least, was a known quantity. And so antisocial that the Uchiha was unlikely to take his Ino away from him. "Dad!" Ino yells. "That was months and months ago. You're getting old." Inoichi nods very seriously and squats down to put himself at her eye level. "That's right," he says, "Daddy is getting old, so you have to remind him who Shindu-kun is. Remember way back when you liked Sasuke-kun and I asked you to tell me one bad thing about him for every 3 good things you came up with?" Inoichi still remembers some of the things Ino came up with, things that made him proud of how observant his daughter was. He'd even added some of the things she said to Sasuke's psych evaluations. But Ino only looks at him now, her expression vaguely horrified. "Can you do that again?" he prompts. Ino nods slowly and starts rather exuberantly, "Well, Shirokuen is super smart. He's at the top of our class, so he's even smarter than Sasuke-kun, and he reads all the time. And he's really nice, too, and he cares about everybody, even Forehead Girl, Sakura. He doesn't like it when people fight and he always helps us with our homework if we ask, and he says hi to everybody and he remembers everybody's birthdays and even knows all the names of Yukumo-kun's pet fish even though one of them dies at least every day. That's how crazy nice he is. Shirokuen is so good at chakra control, even though us girls are supposed to be better, and he almost always wins in classroom spars because he does really inventive things that nobody else sees coming and dash. One bad thing for every 3 good things," Inoichi reminds her, because it looks like Ino isn't going to run out of steam anytime soon. Ino closes her mouth and looks at the ground. To Inoichi, this is flag number 2. His daughter has always loved speaking, and blabbers on both when he wants her to and when he pleads for her to stop. He bends down even further and tilts his head up so he can look her in the eyes. "Ino," he says quietly, "nobody's perfect and that's okay. Surely there's something." Ino sighs and sits heavily on the ground beside the tulip patch. Inoichi finds himself surprised again, because he knows how much Ino likes it when she's taller and therefore better than her father. But she's consciously lowered herself. For Inoichi, it's the third flag. Ino looks out over the flower garden to their house and flower shop and then back at her father. When she speaks again, it is in a quiet voice. It is in the voice that she used to use to ask her father for favors. "Daddy," she says gently, "have you ever liked something so much that you wished it was perfect?" Inoichi makes to talk but she cuts him off. "Have you ever liked something so much that, even though you know in your mind that it can't possibly be perfect, you still don't look too closely at anything that could be wrong because you want to believe that it is?" Inoichi looks at her daughter, looks into her serious cyan eyes, more serious than he's ever seen her, and cannot find any words to say. She continues, "It's not just me either. Everybody likes him a lot. He even went and befriended Nanoko-sensei, and everybody knows she's kooky. But since Shirokuen is so nice to her, and he honestly cares about her so much that sometimes everybody goes and eats lunch with her. He got Shikamaru to study, Daddy. Ever since he transferred in last year." She pauses and recollects. "I don't know how to say it," Ino admits, "but if you knew him you'd know what I'm talking about. There's just something about him that shines. Something about his daughter, something about her voice or her words or her eyes. Something terrifies Inoichi. It terrifies him to death because she is changing and transforming and he doesn't even understand why. And he wants to hate this Shirokuen, but he can't. Because Inoichi remembers feeling like that man could never fail. And even though he wants to tell his daughter that all this trust, all this love is just going to hurt her, he cannot find the words because he remembers the comfort of that total conviction that that man, at least, could do no wrong. That he would follow behind him forever. That Konoha would always be bathed in such sunshine. But Yamenka Inoichi also remembers that Namikaze's Minato fell. Naruto does not mean to hear them talking. And in fact, she doesn't listen at first. But something catches her attention. The names click in her mind and she is suddenly running to the rhythm of the not true words and her own heart beating violently against her spine, against her throat, against her whole world. Tanto-sensei says, "I just heard. Are you going to the memorial service?" A heavy silence. "Are you okay?" Irika-sensei says, "It's just always sad to hear about these things, you know? Narutomo was such a good student." Tanto, "She was kind of quiet, but smart in that Nara way. You never expect that kind to fall." Irika, "I hear it was in defense of her teammate. And Inazuka, right?" A PRGNT pause. "Well, let it never be said that she was anything less than loyal." Tanto, "It's the best way to die." Die. In fact, Naruto has almost forgotten. In fact, she wants to forget. She wants to lose herself in him. Minai loves him. Nanoko is just a broken but lovely lady to him. His world is composed of laughter and smiles, of the kids in his class and doing the best on the next test and working and playing in often unequal parts. But the hidden truth is always sitting there, in her mind. She is not him. Minai hates her, and she knows it's because of what happened to Minai after she ran away. Nanoko is her first teacher, and it's all her fault that the closest thing she had to a mother now can't even speak in complete sentences. And none of them are her friends. None of them have ever even heard of Uzumaki Naruto. She sits down heavily on the floor and lets the burning tears escape the barrier of her eyelids. She lets them run down her cheeks. She lets them splash on the floor, on her legs, on her hands. She cries for Tomo and Shuka and everything she still wants to forget. Even Mei and Siki. They make her life so hard. They make it so hard, because otherwise she might be able to forget and let go and just be Shindu to Shiro even if a little traitorous part of her head says that they are what make him, as well. But there's a distinct difference because Shindu is made up of other things as well. New friends and smiles and no secrets at all. "How long," a little part of her asks, "how long has it been since you last cried?" And she is breaking down again, dripping and leaking apologies to them, to all of them, and telling them she doesn't want to forget, she won't forget, she'll never forget. Telling them even if it kills her, she'll hold that pain close to her heart. Shindu Toshiro is made up of smiles and sunshine and frivolously important things, but Uzumaki Naruto is composed of tears. Nara Shikamaru finds himself, once again, at cousin Tomo's grave. Tomo was 7 years younger than the next youngest Nara child, so she ended up taking care of all of the Nara babies, as she called them affectionately. Even though Shikamaru was smarter, even though he knew he was mature for a child, that difference of 2 years and maybe something about the way Tomo held herself overshadowed his mind. Shikamaru sees some of his other cousins there sometimes, or Uncle Tasha, but he always waits a respectful distance away so they can talk to Tomo alone. But the girl standing before Tomo's grave is not one he recognizes. She has a strange dress on and a very large sun hat that nearly covers her face, but he catches a sight of startled blue eyes looking straight at him and hair like gold. His first thought is Ino, but all at once, he knows it's not true. Then she is running off, skirts flying in the air, and her back is too strangely familiar. It reminds him of somebody and he can't figure out why. And when Shikamaru goes nearer to Tomo's grave, he finds the usual assortment of flowers, the daily bar of chocolate from Uncle Tasha, and a peppermint candy. Every night, Uncle Tasha comes to burn everything up so the smoke can float to the sky where Tomo is. How strange, Shikamaru thinks. Maybe Uncle Tasha missed it from yesterday. Then he takes a peppermint candy from his pocket, Tomo's favorite kind, and lays it beside the other one. He clasps his hands and bows 3 times. Then, because there is nothing to say and the silence is too profound, Shikamaru talks about his class. He talks about how Chuji eats in the back of the room and they always try to pick the side of the classroom opposite of Shindu, because Irika is always looking at Shindu. Things happen on the other side of the classroom, Shikamaru says, and he likes it that way. He has the vaguest feeling that Tomo is scolding him, telling him to put himself out there more. Eventually Shikamaru gets tired of talking and his voice is hoarse and he's tired of trying to keep Shindu out of this private conversation, even though Shindu seems to make space for himself wherever he goes. Shikamaru does not admit to himself, even in his mind, that he is sometimes jealous of Shindu's drive. That sometimes he wonders at how the boy embedded himself everywhere, even in his best friend Chuji with that bag of chips and a couple exuberant words and the accepted invitation to go running together. Chuji, running. Shikamaru still can't quite believe it. And he doesn't think that he can convince Chuji to go running either. But Shikamaru admits something else, out loud, something even more secret than that. I think you'd like my classmates. Especially Shindu, he says to the stone. He reminds me of you, sometimes. Shikamaru's voice doesn't break down on the last word. It doesn't, really. And he doesn't cry. Really. Naruto is walking slowly, balancing her cafeteria food on one arm, when she hears the scream. The academy is always filled with noise. Somewhere, there is always a class playing, children laughing and screaming. The individual classes are small, but there is a graduating class every 2 months, so the academy has plenty of people in it. There is always noise, but when Naruto hears the scream, she recognizes it. The recognition is terrifying, and all at once she has dropped her tray and is sprinting down the hallway, heart pounding, chakra pumping through her veins in lieu of oxygen. She can't breathe. She can't think. She can't do anything but run as fast as her feet can take her. Naruto arrives at Nanoko's door in 2 long moments to find her sensei on the floor, convulsing, and she turns cold. Didn't Siki teach her first aid? Didn't the classes cover this? There's something she can do, something she should do, but Naruto is frozen in place, stuck hoping it's just a bad dream. There's no adrenaline in her system. There's no visible enemy. There's nothing she can do. Shindu-kun. A startled voice says from behind her and she turns, meaning to face the speaker, but her eyes won't move from Nanoko. What are you doing here? She recognizes him. It's Timoto, the severest teacher and teacher of advanced mathematical studies. Since most ninja hopefuls only learn rudimentary math, focusing instead on rhetoric and physical techniques and chakra, Takimoto has only 1 class rotation and often substitutes for sick teachers. His class, Naruto recalls, is somewhere in this hallway. Seeing that she has no response, Taimoto makes a small dissatisfied noise and stalks through the doorway. Go to my room and get the small red bottle in the second drawer on my desk and a water bottle from the closet. He pins down Nanoko's flailing arms, and when Naruto hesitates, barks, hurry. Naruto scampers out the door and down the hall. She doesn't remember where Timoto's room is, but she finds a metal plate with the leaf insignia and Timoto-sensei carved in it hung on a door 3 doors down the hall. She bursts into the room. There are 2 students inside, working out of thick textbooks, and only one glances up at her when she runs to Timoto's desk and begins opening his drawers. She finds the red bottle easily. It's a dark crimson that stands out against the pale brown wood of the drawers. The student watching her speaks up suddenly, startling her. "We're out of water," he says. "And all the water bottles are in the teacher's lounge. You'll have to go tell Timoto-sensei that." "What?" It takes her a second to process. The other student looks up from the textbook. Math. Naruto can see the problems now. "It's Nanoko-san, right?" The boy frowns and furrows his eyebrows. "You gotta feel sorry for her. Do you know what happened to her?" Naruto asks quickly. He looks at her and she looks right back at his eyes. "My mum said it's 'cause she mixed with the wrong sort," he said finally. "She got involved with the wrong people." Naruto means to hold his gaze, but she can't. So she says to his shoes, "Thanks for letting me know." When she runs into Nanoko's classroom again, Takimoto looks up and makes a little disappointed noise. "We're out of water, aren't we?" he asks, rhetorically. He stands and Nanoko quivers. "Come here, Shindoku-kun. Make sure she doesn't hurt herself. I'll be back in a minute." Naruto rushes over to hold Nanoko's arms down, dropping the red bottle on a desk, and Timoto leaves at a brisk walk. Nanoko is murmuring to herself, talking in strange, halting tones. Naruto bends closer to hear and suddenly Nanoko is shouting again. "Hate!" she yells, and then quiets to a whimper, "I hate to." She looks up blankly at the ceiling, her arms twitching, and says, "Naruto." Naruto's heart stills at her name, aloud in the air for the first time in years. "Naruto," Nanoko says again. Then, distinctly though painstakingly slowly, "It's only my fault." The strength goes out of her arms. "Why me?" Nanoko cries. "I didn't want this." Shindu fades, and all it leaves her with is Naruto and the tears. Except Naruto feels her world shaken. Naruto feels her sky falling. Because somewhere in her heart, Naruto always believed that Nanoko loved her. Her tears fall on Nanoko's face, on her neck, on her hands. She drips. It's disgusting. She can't stop. She has food on her legs from when she dropped her tray. She's a mess. She's a mess and Nanoko hates her. Then Nanoko looks up again. Her eyes are gray, like steel, like bad weather coming. "No," she says. "No, I'm sorry." She stills, and her body stops convulsing. Naruto, head bowed, eyes closed against the tears, hearing her first teacher whisper brokenly and so softly it may just be her own imagination, "I love you, Naruto. I'm sorry. Stay safe." Naruto does not hear Timoto come back in with the water. She watches but does not see Nanoko swallow it obediently and go limp. She moves and goes to the bathroom to wash her face and clean herself up, but she does not think. She does not know what to think. Naruto is afraid that if she thinks about what just happened, her barely mended world will break into pieces again. It's easier to hold herself together by pretending nothing happened. Naruto needs something to be easy. But when is anything ever easy? And is anything easy even worth it? Irika's palms sweat as he sits, tense and upright, in the chair by the hallway that leads to the Hokage's office. He is sure that the secretary is laughing at him in her head as she flips through what looks to be a fashion magazine. Some strange part of his mind provides Irika with the information that all the real paper pushers of whose ranks Irika was, for a short time, about to join are housed elsewhere, and this lady is probably some kind of high-ranking ninja pretending to be bored. He still feels like she's laughing at him. Finally, footsteps sound out in the hallway, and an ornately dressed, foreign-looking man walks into the waiting room. He does not even spare Irika a glance, but Irika catches the way the ambassador's eyes stray to the woman, who is now twirling her hair coyly and downward. "You can go in now," the secretary says. Is that mirth in her voice? Irika almost runs out of the room. But then, realizing he is approaching the Hokage's office, he slows down and tries to compose himself. It's just a yearly meeting after all. Irika always had to hand in reports and go talk to somebody ranked high in the education ladder. He just has the fortune to meet with the Hokage this time, because his class is the clan class, and their graduation is coming up in just 6 months. After a minute of too fast breathing, he realizes it's not going to get better, swallows his heart, and opens the door. The Hokage smiles benignly at him. "Irika-san," he says, and his voice is warm. "Come and sit. How are you? How are the kids treating you?" Irika smiles shakily. He sits. "I'm fine," he says. "The children are great, they're a joy to teach." "Really? I must get you to teach Kanomaru's class, then," the Hokage says. Irika's heart jumps in his throat again. "You'd surely change your mind. He's such a brat." The Hokage laughs to himself and shakes his head at the papers on his desk. Irika laughs too, startled, and the sound of his laugh is squished and vaguely irritating even to him, but he finds himself relaxing. "Tell me about the children and how well they're learning." The Hokage finally speaks. After a moment of shuffling through the class portfolios, Irika recognizes them. "I hear this year somebody managed to obtain the scholarship." Suddenly the doubts rise again. Irika knows he's supposed to tell somebody about Shindu. No, that's not probably the girl's name about her deception, but for some reason it feels like a secret he should keep. Old loyalty rings out true. "Actually, that's an interesting story," he says. "There's more to Shindu Toshiro than there seems to be, even at first glance." She opens the door to 2 familiar faces, one she sees every day, and one she never wished to see again. "Naruto," the Hokage says. "There is nowhere to run." Some days, Sarutobi Hiruzen revels in how mundane his life has become. Even though he is, in essence, the ruler of a military nation, it's a peaceful military nation. Sarutobi grew on a diet of war, and now that there is peace, he sometimes finds it so alien it feels like a dream. The village loves him, he knows, and though some part of his mind and ego want to claim the peace and prosperity as his own, the other, greater part knows that this is not the case. He is just a face to associate with the current good times, and if some altercation between border patrols causes the ever rambunctious IWA to declare war on them, he would be the face of the hard times and rations and deaths. The position of Hokage is such a burden to bear, at times unbearably heavy, at times breath of helium, lifting into flight. But at times like these, when no wars loom on the horizon, it should be unbelievably light. Until, of course, Sarutobi is reminded that he is old and complacent and, despite all evidence to the contrary, just as prone to mistakes as any other human. In hindsight, with time and space and the knowledge of what happened to guide him, Sarutobi sees it all clearly. Of course, it must have been frightening for Naruto to find the Hokage waiting at her door. And it must have been even more terrifying when he took her to the INT department, hoping to save himself some paperwork and avoid his office, which was designed for the express purpose of intimidation. But all his good intentions naturally went to waste when he was called to deal with an important ANBU mission and offhandedly told one of the receptionists to put her in a room, meaning, of course, to just get her out of the lobby. Sarutobi can't even blame the receptionist because, in hindsight, a room is a common enough colloquialism for the torture rooms. Some days, Sarutobi Hiruzen basks in the mundaneness of peace. Today is just not one of those days. It has been 10 years since Yamanaka Inoichi last set foot in this building. 10 years, and he hasn't missed it at all. Sure, the sound of people screaming assaults him like a long-lost friend, as soon as he descends into the lower, less sanctioned parts of the department, but it's a friend he almost wishes would stay lost. And the contrived smell of fresh BLD and hot out-of-the-throat vomit is as familiar as his mother's perfume, or, more fittingly, the garbage rack outside his neighbor's butcher shop. But either of those he can stand. What Inoichi hates most is how the people walking briskly around with hardened faces and bloody, nameless devices, bloody, nameless files, bloody, nameless papers, words paid for in full by BLD in their hands will bow to him, and how their expressions will change to reverent shades of respect. It reminds him all too well of his own bloody past. No, Yamanaka Inoichi doesn't miss the intelligence department. He doesn't miss the dignified, above-ground facilities, nor does he miss the not-for-your-eyes, underground torture cells. The Intelligence Department. Data collection through INT, or interrogation, networking, and torture. Interrogation and data processing are the only above-ground sections. After all, processing is fairly harmless, even if it has to be well protected, and interrogation is a benign form of questioning. But the spy network and the torture chambers have to be kept from all official documentation and all foreign officials. The Intelligence Department. A collection of the legal, the bordering on illegal, the legal only because the government is doing it, and the downright illegal. The Intelligence Department. Inoichi's oldest home. Inoichi had sworn never to enter the place again. And if not for the direct order of his commander-in-chief, the Hokage, he wouldn't even have considered it. But the Hokage ordered, and so he walks toward the designated room with some trepidation and not a little bit of anger. But all thoughts fly out of his head, every bit about orders, everything about past promises, every last piece of past reminiscence, when he enters the room. There is a girl in the room. A girl, in the soundproofed sterile white, a girl not that little children are any less dangerous than adults in a cell specifically designed to pull people out of their comfort ranges, to pull them into a sense of being alone despite the recorded screams and well-placed scents and BLD splatters that they were led through. A cell designed to make people think that others had died, and that they would die soon, and that afterwards there would be nothing left of them but white. A cell designed to make people remember that his clan, the Yamanaka clan, could destroy their minds utterly, taking all they tried to protect, and Konoha's power could likely destroy even the memory of them after they had gone. A girl is in that room. But not even that. The problem is that Inoichi knows her immediately. And then he knows her again. He knows her by two names and he is so blind not to have seen it before. It's obvious now that he sees her, and he can't help but wonder at the marvelous deception she must have pulled off. Another part of him is berating himself for getting soft, for not watching carefully, for not catching the greenest kind of newbie on a mission to fool him. 1,000 thoughts race through his head. But foremost is Ino, and his heart leaps into his throat at the thought of her or the something in her voice or her words or her eyes. Namikaze? No, Uzumaki Naruto turns, and everything, even Ino, is wiped away. The only thing that Yamanaka Inoichi can see for 3.5 seconds is Namikaze Minato's broken body in a pool of crimson on the ground, surrounded by a foul, poisonous miasma of chakra and the crowd of stiff killers in muted shades of color gathered around him, heads bowed in tribute to the greatest man that ever lived before them. But after that, even the image that haunted Inoichi for weeks or months or even years after the Kyuubi attack is overshadowed by Naruto's smile. "Hey," she says, "you're Ino's dad, right?" Inoichi remembers in a rush that he is not an enemy shinobi, not a nameless interrogator, not a foreboding Yamanaka, but a father. He falters in that moment because his identity now is the father of his Ino, a husband and flower seller and occasional advice giver. In that rush, in that moment, Inoichi feels the heavy weight of shame, heavier than the weight of a humid Konoha sky bearing down, heavier than the body of a broken comrade, heavier than the sound of his many sins. Inoichi smiles. It's too tight for comfort, too strained and unnatural by his standards, but he doesn't doubt that she doesn't notice it. He had been the best in his field, after all, and a decade of retirement would still place him above her in terms of skill. Even if a decade of retirement has eroded his skills to this point, to the point where this can affect him. "Yes," he says. "Come on, let's get you out of here." The break of trust happens like this. In order to trust, they lie. In order to lie, they break that trust. The break of trust takes only one day. The break of trust begins like this. Inoichi smiles. The room has 2 open windows, decorated with pale blue and yellow patterned curtains. A small, round mahogany desk rests in between them, laden with the weight of the truly enormous bouquet of sunflowers atop it. Inoichi settles himself in the worn cloth couch beside the girl and hands her a glass of orange juice. Naruto, much less suspicious and jittery but still tense, takes it and sips at it cautiously. Inoichi smiles. "I was so surprised when I heard about you," he begins gently. "I thought you had died years ago. Where have you been all this time?" Her hands shake and the orange juice sloshes around in the cup. She takes another long sip, her eyes moving quickly, and finally answers, "In Konoha." Even though Inoichi knows not to go into an interrogation, or anything really, with previous assumptions, he's still surprised by this. He was certain that, even if it was a misdirecting lie, she would name some other place. To even think that she could have been here the whole time, right under their noses? It is entirely too plausible. "That's surprising," he says, carrying on the conversation as if it feels comfortable. "I thought for sure that you had gone somewhere else." "How would I get anywhere else?" she blurts, surprised. "Ah," Inoichi thinks. His smile is beginning to stretch at his muscles. "We thought maybe somebody had taken you," he admits. Instantly he realizes his mistake. She stiffens at the word "we" and slides so her feet touch the ground. "Who else is there?" she asks jumpily. "I mean my wife and I," he lies easily, smiling again. "We knew your father," he says, and watches as her eyes flit from the window to his eyes. "He saved my life." Her mouth opens ever so slightly, but no sound comes out. "He was the greatest ninja I had ever known, and he saved all of our lives." "Stop talking, Inoichi." Something in her eyes, in the lines too old for her young face, something compels him to continue. "As long as you don't pose a danger to my family or Konoha, I would never be your enemy." "You knew my father." She swallows. "Could you tell me more about him? What was he like? Did he?" Looking distinctly uncomfortable, she trails off. Inoichi tries not to wonder what she wanted to say. "I'm afraid that it isn't my place to tell you," he said. "That should be left to your godfather, or somebody closer to you. But you should know that he was a wonderful ninja and the greatest man I've ever known." When he leaves, Naruto sits on the ground under the window and thinks. She has more questions than answers, and still she doesn't know if it's right to trust this man. For instance, if he had known about her all this time, why was it only now that she knew about him? How did he come to take her out of the building where the Hokage had imprisoned her? And there is another thing. There is another thing, a half-forgotten dream. A dream so sweet and lost that now remembering it hurts more than not having it in the first place. Because, ever since she was terribly little, Naruto has dreamt of a family. In the orphanage, she was convinced that all her problems would go away, if only her family showed up. And she dreamt of them. She dreamt of them when it was cold and when she was lonely and when she couldn't bear anything else. She dreamt that a woman would sweep in, smelling of freshly baked bread and green grass and sunshine, and gather her into warm arms and whisper, "Oh, my sweet Naruto, we have been looking for you everywhere, and now we've finally found you." And her father would say, "It's time to go home, kiddo." And there would be a dog and a little brother and no worries and no attic and no pink or cute or soft. Those early dreams remained faceless and nameless, though sometimes she would assign them honey blonde hair, or deliberate that her mother should have cornflower blue eyes, her favorite crayon color, and her father should have periwinkle eyes. The only thing that remained consistent were their smiles and the feeling of warm arms. They made her okay again. It was much later that she felt the need to dream again. She dreamt of sky blue eyes and a faint gold stubble and gravity-defying hair. She dreamt of a hero, the hero with a flea-on-sight order and, if the stories were true, practically single-handedly won Konoha the last war. A father that would be safe and big and strong, the best ninja in the whole world. Naruto knew to dream big, so she sometimes dreamt that Namikaze Minato was her father. But in her quieter moments, she would think about how the hero became the hero by giving up his life for the village. And she would wonder, secretly, that such a great love for the village was terrifying, and she couldn't hope to compete. A good ninja, willing to die for Konoha and willing to kill for Konoha and willing to live for Konoha, could a good ninja really be a good parent? And at those times Naruto would go take a walk to the marketplace, and wistfully watch the civilian families. The maimed, out-of-commission ex-shinobi playing with their daughters and long-haired women that still walked with a certain grace carrying their sons to different stalls, threading through the crowds with ease. But most often, Naruto doesn't dream of a father at all. Most often, when she closes her eyes, Naruto dreams of her mothers. All three of them. The faceless, sweet-smelling woman had long since disappeared. Even when she closes her eyes now, Naruto can see three distinct faces in the black. Inoichi leaves Naruto in his guest room, confident in the knowledge that there are guards, and that his wife is spending the weekend at the offices, and Ino is at a sleepover. He has an inkling of where to go. After all, if Naruto has truly been in Konoha all this time, there is only one place so close to home that is yet so far from home and so full of lost people that she could have conceivably hid there. One discreet inquiry to the MSTRS of Lotus House, and Inoichi is on the fast track to Velvet House. He holds out hope until the words left the geisha's mouth. There was hope that she hadn't been in a res, but merely in the red light district. A gambling place, perhaps. Or the hope that she was in Lotus House, one of the more respectable ones, a place for entertainment and fine dining and talented geisha, while Velvet is more on the next tier, a place for entertainment and alcohol and talented wares. It seems that the people here have long memories, long enough to remember his name from the war. He steps up to Velvet and raps sharply on the door. As soon as it opens he demands, "Get me the lady of this house." It almost takes a conscious effort not to let his voice twist and his face contort at how odd the word lady tastes in his mouth. But there is a certain code in INT dealings with the establishments, and it doesn't matter how much Inoichi believes it to be a lie as long as it works. The girl bows hurriedly. Inoichi ignores the bruise on her back. A girl behind her runs off and she straightens and smiles. "Please, sir, sit and have a drink while you are waiting." "No drink," he says, but follows her to a chair. She sits before him, face serene, back ramrod straight, her shoulders back and chest forward. Displaying her assets, he thinks, not unkindly. "Relax," he commands. "I am here on official business." She smiles politely but doesn't relax her posture at all. "It isn't polite to show less of ourselves," she says by way of explanation. "Whether you are a customer or not." An older woman sweeps into the room and the girl stands and walks out smoothly, with a gait almost as gliding as a kunoichi's. A former kunoichi, Inoichi guesses. Many of them are, after all. Some broken kunoichi go to whorehouses just as some broken shinobi go to manual elbir. The circle of life, in a ninja city. "Sir, I am Lady Tessa," the woman says, drawing his eyes back to her. Her makeup is tasteful if on the heavy side, her hair elaborate and probably dirty and her aged face taut with tension. "What brings you to our humble institution?" She smiles, and a flash of her teeth shows blackened, tea-stained teeth, but her smile closes almost immediately, the sign of a conscious effort to hide it. "Several years ago, a young girl lived here as a runner," he says. "Tell me everything you know about her and bring me everybody involved with her." She freezes, her face twitching as an emotion appears and she wipes it off just as fast as it is there. "I didn't know you would come," she exclaims after a brief and pregnant pause. "Or else I would not have sold them." "Sold them?" "Yes, the two girls that were involved with Ritoshi were auctioned off the month after she disappeared," she explains, "for disobeying house rules. They took care of her and taught her rudimentary kunoichi things, like chakra manipulation and womanly necessities. From what I hear, they were her teachers and mothers. The other girls haven't really worked with her and I didn't take an interest in our little runner. She was cheap, costing only room and board, and a diligent, efficient girl." Inoichi decides to pursue this line of questioning before delving into some of the other questions the lady's little explanation brings up. "Where are they now?" Tessa looks slightly startled. "Oh, they're almost certainly dead," she says with a lilt in her voice. "It's a shame, really, they were lovely girls, but there's a reason I don't sell my girls unless they've made trouble for the house. But you know what they say," she titters, it sounds awful coming from her makeup-caked, wrinkled mouth. "Death is inevitable. It just calls sooner for some." Inoichi returns to talk to Naruto several times after ascertaining that she had, in fact, stayed in Konoha. Mostly he prods at her loyalties, trying to discern if she still loves Konoha. But the last time is the only time she initiates the conversation. He settles himself on the couch as always and hands her a glass of orange juice. She sets it on the table next to slowly fading sunflowers and talks before he can. It is a question. "What happened to Nanoko-sensei?" she asks, like it is the most innocent question in the world. It's nearing noontime and the light streams in through the window, throwing a halo of light around her. He feels inexplicably guilty. Maybe that influences his almost foolish, certainly strange, decision to try for the truth. She was taken in for questioning. When nothing came up, she was subjected to Yamanaka mind techniques, he says. The Hokage thought she had taken you away from Konoha, you see. He means it to imply care, to imply that the Hokage worries for her, but instead he watches her face tense up at just the mention of the title. Naruto only reacts this way to the Hokage's name. Even when Inoichi led her around Konoha to further the illusion of freedom, he only bears witness to a relaxed face and cheerful greetings to people even he does not know the names of. After settling at Ichiraku Ramen for a meal, he watched her face and no longer wondered how this seemingly genuine, heartfelt boy had escaped the notice of Konoha. Even though the so-called civilians of Konoha are in actuality ninja at heart, even though the baker is a crippled chunin, the clerk a failed genin, and even Ichiraku himself the son of a former jounin, even though they should have noticed, for a moment Inoichi even fools himself. It may be blonde hair and blue eyes and a smile that is ingrained deeply as trustworthy and just worthy in the depths of his subconsciousness. It may be the seamless way Naruto turns into Shindu, the way that in the sun and smiles of everybody around them, it seems all too real. It may be his own unfathomably, unforgivably persistent weakness. Why? She asks softly. It may be any number of things that compels him to answer, again truthfully, to the hint of something great in her eyes, something he does not want to lie to, something he instinctively trusts will stay true to Konoha if only Konoha stays true to her. And nothing is more powerful than the truth. Inoichi knows this better than anyone. Nevertheless, he is a little surprised when the truth comes tumbling out. It is only a half-conscious decision, hastily rushing across his tongue to the air. Nanoko was one of the many people who migrated to Konoha about a decade ago. We always get many refugees and converters, but a decade ago Konoha was in a delicate enough position to accept most of them in order to keep our military power and prosperity. She was very talented, and she passed the initial screening tests. When she applied to become an instructor at the academy, the INT division subjected her to heavy background checks, as they do for all teachers. However, her actions regarding you were very suspicious, and even higher authorities examined her background and found it lacking. So she was brought in for questioning. A strong, terrible, undead silence. Why me? Pardon. Naruto grimaces, her face contorting in heavy emotions, and Inoichi pulls himself back a little at the strangled voice that comes out of her mouth. Why did they care? Why did Nanoko-sensei suffer for helping me? What's so special about me that I'm not allowed to be dash? There is a moment of silence and Inoichi almost tells her everything she cannot know. But he doesn't. It may be any number of things that has Inoichi wondering why old loyalty runs so deep that even he cannot fathom a reason behind it any longer. The break of trust happens in an hour. No, even less than that. The continuation of Naruto's long entrance into the jaded, lying, gray areas of the ninja world happens in only the amount of time it takes Inoichi to whisper, sorry, and the Ienbyu to shunshin with them to the Hokage's office. As she stands before the old man in the hat with the power to destroy nations, she trembles. As she stands before the man who on a whim destroyed her life, she has an epiphany. As Naruto stands before the Hokage, she understands. Sarutobi steeples his fingers in front of his face and closes his eyes. Inoichi came to him with a frigidness in his expression and caustic acid in his voice and some kind of hard emotion directed vaguely toward Sarutobi but not so directed as to be treasonous, for Inoichi is an ever-careful man, but Sarutobi doesn't regret calling him back. Inoichi has always been the most delicate, the most sensitive of the intelligence operatives, or at least the most delicate out of the ones with enough clearance for this, and he doesn't care to see how well Mitarashi Anko or Marino Ibiki fare with untrusting children. And above all, Inoichi is right. And because of Inoichi, Sarutobi has a good idea of everything that has happened in Naruto's life up until now. It is thanks to Inoichi and his careful handling of the situation that Sarutobi knows he can trust the girl in front of him to be much the same girl that left only with a few added years in a dirtier part of Konoha. He smiles his grandfather's smile, but he knows it doesn't reach his eyes, and from her stone expression it doesn't reach her either. Naruto, he names her. Hokage-sama. Her eyes drift to the ground, her features settling in a perfect neutral mask of decorum. But Sarutobi has been a shinobi for nearly all his life, or so close that it could at the very least round up, and a politician for about a decade too long, and he can see the fear in the trembling of her fingers and her shaky breathing. And then he is struck by a revelation of sorts. Naruto is a child. All this time, chasing her shadow and then discovering the fantastic feat she'd pulled off right under their noses. What this said about her capabilities or his shinobi's lack thereof he didn't want to consider. He had come to view her as a target. Objective A. But this is Minato and Kushina's daughter, and she is the granddaughter who ran into his office and asked for ramen years ago, and even though her eyes are wary and she is scared of him now, even though he hasn't watched over her and guided her the way he wanted to, he is still proud of the things she has managed. Cautious and afraid and hesitant, because he knows this isn't what he had wanted for her, but proud nevertheless. Naruto watches as the Hokage breathes in slowly through his pipe and slowly back out. A thin tendril of smoke drifts to the ceiling, diagonally, drawn to the window behind him as if it hopes to find a crack there and escape into blue sky. She watches it until she is not even sure, anymore, if the smoke is really still there, gathered at the edge of the room, or if she is simply imagining the faint haziness in her expectation of it. Finally, the Hokage talks, and her eyes fall back to his lined face and the little scars littered across his skin. Trophies of past battles, reminding her that the man in front of her is dangerous, and the man in front of her, no matter how kind he is the man that Nanoko warned her about before she was taken. 10 years ago, the Hokage intones, as if he is telling a story, a destructive and powerful force approached this village. You have no doubt learned in your classes that the Yondaime Hokage defeated the Kyuubi no Yoko. This is not entirely accurate. He waits, as if for a gasp of surprise or some kind of reaction, but Naruto is too busy locking down her fear and anger and sadness to feel anything more. The Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi away, Sarutobi continues, and he sealed it into a baby, because only a baby could bear the seal. You, my dear girl, are the jailer of the Kyuubi. It lives in a seal inside you, and every day you save us all from destruction by holding it back. Naruto's mind whirls. It's not what she expected, but it makes sense all the same. The matron that whispered demon and the sadness and misery and shame on their faces as they considered her, as they hated her, as they feared her like a mice fears a sleeping cat. And the concern of the Hokage makes sense as well. She wonders if she is meant to be forged into a weapon, if the seal can harness the might that nearly destroyed Konoha. She wonders if they fear that the Kyuubi will escape, that the seal will malfunction, that they will die from the thing that is within her. But all she feels is a strange sense of calmness, an almost peace, a swelling of love for Nanoko and Mei and Siki, who dared to love her and trust her when the Hokage himself watches her with something akin to fear. I want you to know that I have always done my utmost to protect you, he murmurs at last. And it wasn't my intention for you to end up by yourself all those years ago. It was only ever for your protection. Doesn't tell him that she doesn't want this harsh protection, or this heavy burden, or any of it. She doesn't tell him that all she wants is Nanoko back and Mei and Siki, and she doesn't tell him that she doesn't want his words and she doesn't want to understand because then she'll be left with a heart full of anger and nowhere to turn it. What she does say is, "Thank you, Hokatama." She cannot look him in the eyes. "You are too kind to me." They sit in silence. She can't bring herself to speak more or to glance at his face or to even think, so she focuses on the threads of the carpet and the grain of the redwood desk. Finally he sighs. "Do you like your academy class, Naruto?" Naruto glances up out of reflex and almost flinches at the kind, grandfatherly look directed at her. Schooling her expression, she manages to say, "We were friends." She knows he catches the implication of that past tense friendship. She knows because he frowns a little, and she adds vindicatively, "Everybody liked Shindu." Because she can still remember whispers and glares and the way nobody wanted anything to do with Uzumaki Naruto. It was only when she was Rutoshi in the Velvet House, Only when she was Shindu that people would smile and call to her and ask how was your day. Do you know that your father named you? The Hokage asks suddenly. A smile pulls at his wrinkled cheeks. You have your mother's last name and your father named you after his favorite book character. She stares at the floor. A familiar burn tickles her nose and she squeezes her eyes shut and lashes out. Everybody talks about my father. Don't think that just because you bring him up I'll like you more, not when you won't even tell me who he is. The Hokage pauses again. No, of course. He soothes eventually, hesitantly. Of course not. Still, it is one thing that you have remaining from your parents. And I don't want you to feel like you have to hide who you are in Konoha. You are safe here. Naruto smiles bitterly at the floor. If I believed I was safe, she says, I would never have wanted to become a kunoichi. If I believed we were safe, there would be no need to protect them after all. After about an hour of fidgeting but subtly, too subtly for even the receptionist's trained eyes to catch in the reception area, Inoichi hears the sound of a door opening slowly. Naruto walks in from the adjoining hallway, head down, steps steady, fists clenched. He opens his mouth to call out and in the space of that second she looks up. Her eyes burn brightly. She stands stiffly next to him and after 2 days of trying to get her to talk, Inoichi knows that at her most quiet and seemingly fragile moments, she is perhaps the most dangerously enraged and hurtful. He asked for you, she says, and there is no need to ask who he is or why there is an edge of bitter steel to her too soft voice. Inoichi considers her, the fingernails digging into the skin of her knees, the eyes unblinking and wide, gazing straight ahead. And yet the vehemence of her hatred seems to have abated. There is a hesitation there that was not present before. Finally the silence and her tense indecisiveness become too unbearable and Inoichi stands and heads toward the Hokage's office and the old man who is sitting there, in a chair that in Inoichi's mind still belongs to a much younger shinobi. But the glint in the professor's eyes as he walks in reminds him that the man before him, no matter how old and wrinkled with time, no matter how grandfatherly and kind he may seem, is still one of the most dangerous people in the land. Inoichi sits respectfully on the edge of his seat and lowers his eyes. The clan children of this semester's graduating class are loyal, Sarutobi says. It isn't a question. She will be assigned on a team with Kakashi, who is also unfailingly loyal and one of our best. Until then, indoctrinate her in Konoha ideals thoroughly. She may not have reached foreign hands, but she cannot have any doubts. I want the people she associated with thoroughly investigated and interrogated, use up to Yamanaka techniques, if need be. Inoichi swallows hard. Yamanaka techniques, at a certain point, if he has to look too deep with the more intrusive of his repertoire, his clan's famed mind techniques can leave only a vegetable behind. If I may, Togasama, Inoichi breaks into the lull cautiously. It would be a good idea not to reinstate her into the class just yet. Knowing that one of their peers had intentionally lied to them cannot be good for the children's psyche. He thinks of his Ino, so trusting in love, and knows that the truth is simply too harsh for her. And it will break the children apart to know such truths, not just Ino, but all of them Naruto as well. Inoichi knows better than anybody that the children are too fragile to be broken now, and they must be allowed to trust their Leaf comrades, lest Konoha lose its next generation. Let them associate Shindu Toshiro and Uzumaki Naruto as different people, and later if they find out it will be less of a betrayal and more of the return of an old friend, whom they thought they would never see again. That way, there will not be a rift in the forces. The Hokage nods thoughtfully. Then continue her education in a secure location. I will assign an ANBU to guard and help as necessary. Send me weekly reports. The daughter of Minato and Kushina, and the Jinchuriki of the most powerful tailed beast, the girl is too powerful. She must believe in Konoha. She must be willing to fight, die, and kill for Konoha. The cold distance in the Hokage's posture sends a chill down Inoichi's spine. I thought you loved her like a granddaughter, he thinks but does not say. I thought that to you, no ninja would be a weapon, that the will of fire was for the people, and not the people for the will of fire. Yes, sir, he says instead. So be it, the Hokage intones. Let your will be done, and let the will of fire burn until the last breath of time. As Inoichi leaves, Sarutobi Hiruzen pulls off his heavy hat and leans back in his chair with a sigh. "Coffee," he says to the room, and feels his embu leave. Only then, only for a moment does he allow himself to lower his head into shaking hands. Then he turns and looks out at the prospect of Konoha. It is usually not so difficult to reconcile his heart and his mind, the man and the Hokage. But in front of his men he can be none other than the fearless Hokage, right even when wrong. And Sarutobi knows he owes it to the girl. He knows with his heart that it is right to be kind, and that in the future such kindness spells only good things, for there is no doubt that Uzumaki Naruto will one day be a great asset for whatever cause she believes in, just as her parents were. But his mind knows with all its neurons that to be kind is to be foolish, and in his mind all the decisions are down to the cold, hard, sterile effects. His mind tells him that even though children shouldn't kill, they will. And even though they call them heroes, they're murderers. And even though he loves Naruto, truly he will condemn her to this life. For certainly, as that facade, or as any other child, the life she would live would be easier. There would be no parental shadows, no bloody past, no demons lurking in the minds of everybody around her. It would be a lie, but it would be a kind one. But Uzumaki Naruto will have to prove herself to the world. She will have to become strong, because if she doesn't, she will surely die. The Hokage cannot help but wonder if, when her hands are permanently stained with crimson because only children fight battles without bloodshed, if, at that moment, when she realizes he has set her on a one-way road, the fear in her eyes when she looks at him will turn to rage. The road was paved with good intentions, but the Hokage cannot help but wonder if, at the end of the path, he will deserve far worse than rage. A week into his first official assignment in years, and Yamanaka Inoichi cannot help but feel heartache for his charge. Uzumaki Naruto is a lovely, bright girl who seems to have been born with the most guilt-inducing, heart-shaking words in her mouth. It is one lovely afternoon after Inoichi enters the compound with a nod to the bored ANBU guard, after brushing shoulders with the spectacled brunette that is supposed to be furthering Naruto's education in the female arts of which Inoichi should know nothing of, as he sits down in front of the recalcitrant girl who still won't look him quite in the eyes. Except this time Naruto looks up at him, and what falls out of her mouth is once again something he does not expect. "You're a good father." The wistful look in her eye and the twist on her lip and the wrinkle in her eyebrow make something in his throat constrict. "Thank you, dear," he finally replies, his tone congenial. Though he had promised himself not to mention her father again, his voice forms a self-deprecating, "But I am a far lesser man than your father was." She smiles, though there is still that wistful look in her eye and wrinkle in her eyebrow. "A good ninja doesn't necessarily make a good father," she retorts. Before he can dispute it, the wistful look in her eye is replaced by something else and she spits out, "Yamanaka-san, if you had to choose between Konoha and Ino, which would you pick?" "Konoha and Ino." Inoichi's mind races. He tries to puzzle out the question. Some part of him wants to know where this came from. Where could this sudden question spring from? Another part of him repeats "you are a good father" at far too loud a volume. And the final part of him, weighed down by guilt, considers the question. Oh, but it's an easy question. He's a ninja, and he's pledged his devotion and he loves and he's too soft, it's been too long, why hasn't he answered the question already? Because Konoha is the ultimate ideal. It's what he will die for, and it's what he kills for, and it's what he lives for. That's Konoha. Oh, but Konoha is Ino. And Ino is Konoha. The guilt crashes in, and one look at the girl's carefully blank face tells him that his silence is enough. Inoichi feels too old and too soft for talking to this smiling girl, this girl who is his Ino's son, but at the same time he can't bear to bring in a harsher man. Besides, he thinks, Namake's Minato, and then his brain stops. Konoha or Ino? It asks him. Naruto or Konoha? It asks Minato. It is almost all Inoichi can do to smile and pleasantry his way out of the room and send in Yugogo. He sits down heavily outside, grateful at least that Naruto and he, by extension, have been moved out of the underground rooms and away from the smells and sounds. But the silence is almost too conducive to thinking. Namake's Minato kept his world steady when the rest of the lands shook in the throes of war, but Uzumaki Namake's Naruto shakes it, tears it down, and remakes it, for the better or the worse, Inoichi can no longer tell. About 2 months into her assignment, Yuzuki Yugogo decides she hopes the Hokage captures more little girls with demons inside them because Uzumaki Naruto is the most delightful, cute little thing to happen to her in all the years since she's joined ANBU. Even if she's a bit exasperating, she concedes as she walks into the white room and finds Naruto on the ceiling. What have I told you about sitting on the ceiling? She asks, exasperated, blowing a strand of purple hair out of her face. Naruto-chan, seriously. Naruto cracks open an eye and grins. Yugogo can't help but grin back, a little. Her charge lets her chakra go and flips with preternatural grace off the ceiling, landing softly on the floor. Quietly, Yugogo approves of her students' careful chakra usage to soften the landing. That if I couldn't do it, I don't deserve to be a kunoichi. Yugogo groans. You're never going to let me live that comment down, are you? She receives a cheeky laugh. Did you ever find your boyfriend a good anniversary present, or are you still looking? Yugogo looks away. Naruto's penchant for remembering things is both endearing and embarrassing, but more often embarrassing for the ANBU operative. She resolves, for the 16th time, not to say anything personal in front of Naruto. Still looking, I see. You could always get him something lame and professional like new kunai. Yugogo flushes. It's not that lame. Naruto laughs and Yugogo resolves to just move on before more embarrassments find her. How are you doing with your chakra exercises? Show me your wall sliding technique. Naruto nods, flips halfway up a wall, and starts skating around the room. I think I'm doing pretty well, she says, but gravity always pulls me down. After 2 circles around the room, she's practically laying on the floor. It was kinda hard to find a good balance between loose enough to slide but sticky enough to keep me up. Keep practicing, Yugogo orders. You might have great reserves, but you need consistent practice to make sure that, as you hit PBRTY and your reserves explode, you keep control over them. She reaches into her kunai pouch and pulls out a little booklet and with the utmost nonchalance declares, since you've been doing so well, I was thinking of teaching you a little technique. The way that Naruto's eyes light up with an almost manic delight fills Yugogo with a foreign, light feeling. She pushes it down sternly but it bubbles up again. With a laugh, she says, but hold your horses. Math first, then cool techniques. The longer you take to finish these worksheets, the longer it takes to get there. But math takes forever. Naruto groans. And you're never any help. Some things you have to learn by yourself, Yugogo says wisely. Besides, I'm shit at maths. They say that time heals all wounds, but the wounds are still fresh. If anything, they bleed harder as the academy comes into view and Naruto slips a smile all too easily onto her face before realizing that she no longer really has a reason to. Smile, that is. Time passed quickly and Yamanaka Inoichi was altogether too kind while Yugogo teased and taught with flair, but somewhere in the back of her mind Naruto always held the memory of Inoichi's smile when he lied to her. So as he pats her on the back she offers him a smile too, and either she's gotten much better at lying or he has, because for all the world it looks as if he believes that she's happy. But all Naruto feels is fear and half-forgotten rage and the cold, hard nothingness that shelters whatever part of her still believes. She hopes to whatever is out there that the nothingness won't disappear, not when she walks through familiar halls, not when she enters a room that calls to her memory, not when she sees the faces of her once friends. Because the last time Uzumaki Naruto trusted anybody, she was betrayed. Ino, do you recognize that girl? I've never seen her around the village before, Sakura whispers as soon as Ino slides into the seat beside her. They always sit here, behind and to the right of Uchiha Sasuke, so they can watch him and occasionally squeal together, but even though the seat beside him would obviously be the best vantage point, nobody dares to sit there. And nobody has, ever since Shindu Toshiro disappeared. Until now. I don't know her either, Ino says, perplexed. Between the two of them, Sakura and Ino know just about every adolescent girl in either the academy or the civilian school. You think she's here for the test? Sakura shrugs. More importantly, why hasn't Sasuke-kun kicked her out of that seat yet? She wonders a bit too loud. Sasuke's eyes shift over to them and she winces and turns away. The new girl doesn't look up from her book, or at least, her head doesn't move. Sakura can't see her eyes through the curtain of golden hair that hangs between them. Well, we can just ask her, Ino laughs. You're still too shy, Sakura-chan. Sakura scowls back good-naturedly, but before Ino can call out, Ami's voice interrupts them. Don't, she says. Whoever that girl is, she's important enough that an ANBU sent her here. Ino pauses and Sakura sees the hesitation in her posture before she straightens and turns to look at Ami. I'm not scared like you, she sneers. My dad's working with ANBU. Maybe her dad's an ANBU or something. It's not that special. What I'm worried about is why Sasuke-kun is letting her sit in Shiro-kun's seat. Sakura watches, fascinated, as Sasuke's back stiffens and his shoulders tense. Sakura watches, fascinated, as the girl beside him startles at the name. She watches as the golden head moves. She watches as a small, thin face glances back. Sakura stares, for the first time in 6 months, into appealing blue eyes, and in her mind she can just see a smile forming on that face and her name on the tongue. The moment passes and Sakura is left hating the pale girl with her pretty face and hair like gold for making her hope. Naruto sits in her seat, heart still doing palpitations. She wants to call out to the people she has known, has learned with, but every time a word forms on her lips she finds it stolen away by the truth that, to them, she is a stranger. And it's better to be a stranger than a liar. She can't bear for them to find out, not like this. And she can't bear to be hurt, not again. Without thinking, her feet lead her to her old seat beside Sasuke. She sits, and he seems so shocked when she does that she almost laughs and asks him, "Team, don't you recognize me?" But then she remembers that she doesn't want him to recognize her and she doesn't say a word. He glares daggers at her and she doesn't say a word. But he doesn't say anything either. Eventually he looks away and ignores her, and that hurts more than anything because it took weeks, but Sasuke had finally talked with Toshiro, and once he started he didn't stop. But now, Naruto sits in Shindu Toshiro's seat and realizes that this time, she is the one breaking trust. Naruto sits in Shindu Toshiro's seat and tells herself that this is what she wants. Naruto sits in Shindu Toshiro's seat and tastes the bitter flavor of lies. It's almost a relief when Kakashi finally walks in the door. Sakura has been sitting, staring outside the window at the annoying, tenacious, annoying bird that just won't stop bloody chirping and trying to ignore the other 2 people in the room. Usually she'd try to talk to Sasuke, but there's a strange tension in the air, some cross between hostility and companionable silence that is a paradox and should not exist. Sakura isn't suicidal, so instead she slowly suffocates in the tenable tension and unknowingly exercises her meager killing intent on the bird, which chirps ever more insistently in alarm. So when the silver-haired shinobi walks in the door, she practically leaps out of her seat to greet him. "Hi, Kakashi-sensei. You're a little late. I'm Haruno Sakura," she babbles, and she knows she's babbling but the words stumble out uncontrollably anyway, "and you must be our instructor. It's a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to working with you." She dips a quick bow and glances up at him. "Ah," Kakashi murmurs through his mask. "Enthusiastic, aren't you?" It doesn't quite sound like a compliment coming from him. She withers, fiddling with her fingers. And then the new girl stands up, fluidly, with the kind of grace Sakura has never possessed, and sketches a low bow. "Kakashi-sensei," she murmurs. "We've been waiting for you." Somehow, it sounds like a reprimand. "I am Uzumaki Naruto." Sakura doesn't think she is imagining the way his eyes linger on her, or the suddenly soft set of his single visible eyebrow. Something resembling resentment wells up in her at the way he seems to almost immediately like this Uzumaki girl, when he almost immediately seems to dislike her. Not to be left out, Sasuke stands and somehow nods with his upper body, managing to make it look unrepentantly patronizing. "Uchiha Sasuke," he intones. "Well." The man deliberates, "Why don't we get to know each other a little better?" He sits on a desk and beckons Sakura closer to join them. She scampers forward and slides into the seat across the aisle from Sasuke carefully. "What do you want to know?" Naruto asks, an amused tilt to her voice. "Everything." Kakashi's single visible eye crinkles in a smile. "Likes, dislikes, interests. He lists off on his fingers, dreams, strengths, weaknesses, deepest, darkest secrets. There's a definite tone of some strange humor in his voice that Sakura can't quite decipher. She shivers. Since you're so enthusiastic, Kakashi continues, why don't you start, Pinky? Yes, sir. Sakura winces at her own high-pitched childish voice and leaps to her feet, banging her hip against the table and swallowing her cry of pain. She bites her lip and can't quite bring herself to meet her teacher's eyes, or the inquiring gaze of the other girl, or Sasuke's complete disregard, so instead she speaks to the board in between them. I'm Haruno Sakura, and I like. Well, she doesn't dare look at Sasuke now, and can't bear to see his contempt for her, especially not in the face of Uzumaki, who despite being around for only 2 days already seems to eclipse Sakura easily. So Sakura rushes out, reading. I don't like pain either for myself or others. I keep a small garden in my spare time and hang out with friends. One day, I want to marry somebody I love and become strong like Sunesama. The last part comes out in a rush. Sakura gasps for air, focusing on the board and trying not to imagine their faces. Well, I've always been told I'm smart. I have a good head for books and tactics. And I've always been good at chakra exercises. But, well, I always lose in practical matches because my stamina is low. She sits down without looking at any of them. Shame heats her neck and face as the silence stretches on. Almost forgotten, she tacks on a quiet, I don't really have any secrets. Then the girl yawns and makes a lazy, satisfied noise in the back of her throat as she stretches. Tsunade of the Sannin. When she smiles at Sakura, there's too much kindness mixed with something unreadable and immeasurably understanding in her expression. Sakura hates it. Sakura hates her. And most of all, Sakura hates the part of her that likes Uzumaki Naruto, even though within the space of 48 hours she is already everything Sakura aspires and fails to be. As she sits there with slow-simmering fire stewing in her heart, Sakura hears the roar of waters in her ears, blood rushing onward in her veins. The sound burns, and it blocks out almost everything. It sounds like shame. It sounds like jealousy. It sounds like determination, a long-forgotten storm that calls back days with golden blonde hair and book races, the red ribbon and rising higher, higher, higher. But old habits fade slowly, and dreams never die. So still she hears him. I like training. I dislike annoyances. My taijutsu is adequate, and my ninjutsu, a heavy pause, below standards. One day I will kill a certain man and restore the Uchiha clan. Sakura's eyes slide without her consent from his face, appealing in fierce and vindictive righteousness, past the unamused and unimpressed countenance of Hatake Kakashi, lingering only momentarily on Uzumaki Naruto, who radiates disapproval despite her unreadable expression. Uzumaki Naruto, who reminds Sakura too clearly of what Sakura didn't want enough to seize for herself. Sakura's neck turns a couple degrees to the left, her eyes find the light of the window. Through the pristine glass panes shine a bottomless blue sky, framed by the faces of 4 legends. Her heart beats a staccato rhythm, the drums of war in her chest. They clash, juxtaposed and ferocious in longing. One side croons of a comfortable life, of mundanity interspersed with emotional passion, of love and romance. It is solid, it is assurance, it is the hope of a good future. The other side sings in operatic wails, hoarse and unbalanced, emotional and unyielding, like Inner, of Ino's back before her, of the golden moment of newly born confidence. Of deciding in that moment to stand firm on her own merit, for herself and before others. Of protection, no, of protecting. It is uncertain, it is difficult, it is the longing for strength. In a nearly deserted and familiar room, Haruno Sakura's heart becomes a battleground for a war that will rage with feverish heights for a few days. It is a war that will change her. It is a war that will save her. What she doesn't say, I want them to be happy, healthy, and safe. I want them to keep smiling forever. That's my dream. But you know, some dreams don't come true. The Hokage has declared a special provision for your team, Kakashi says. Usually I would give you a test tomorrow, one with a 66% failure rate, and you would fail. However, since one of your team members is new to you, you'll be failing my test after 3 weeks instead. You will enter a 3-week probationary PRD, during which you won't take any missions but will train under me. We'll meet at 7 in Training Ground 7 tomorrow. Dismissed. He says it all in a calm but quick voice. His eyes travel over their faces, assessing, searching. He sees everything, except the things he does not want to see. So there they sit. The civilian girl turned toward the window, a slight, unwilling curve to her neck bringing her eyes to his. The still morning boy with eyes downcast but hardened, always angry and bitter and seeking. The lost girl with sad eyes and her appealing fake smile. So there they sit, and Kakashi sees but does not know the quiet realizations in green eyes, the fearful walls around a battered heart, and most certainly not the fragile hope in a bruised but still tenaciously welcoming soul. They must come to rely on each other, the Hokage murmurs, his chin resting on intertwined fingers. Hi's voice is slow and grave. They must connect and share bonds. They must bind themselves to Konoha. We will not lose them. Kakashi says nothing, standing as still as he once did when he was only a shadow. Sarutobi Hiruzen continues as if he has voiced a resounding agreement. You will not fail, Kakashi-kun. You cannot. You can train them like the shadows of this village. You can bind them with BLD and fear. You can teach them to love in the darkness by the fire. You are well acquainted, more familiar than most, with the will of fire. Unsaid is the history that weighs behind each word, more resounding than any sound the Hokage can speak. Kakashi bows his head under the gravity of 24 years of compiled sorrow, and accepts a new burden, one of 3 parts told in excruciating detail through compiled reports, surreptitious surveillance, and the Hokage's own instruction. 3 lives, not to kill, but to keep. Somehow, Kakashi must make them right. It comes as a surprise the first time she asks, a week into their probationary PRD. They have been meeting at 7 and training before Kakashi shows up around noon. She is stretching, hands wrapped around her feet, on the trunk of a tree, her toes pointed to the ground. Sasuke regards her a little jealously, still struggling with the tree-climbing exercise himself. Sakura managed it in one go, and Naruto taught them in the first place. Despite Sakura's appeasements and explanations about chakra control, it rankles to be the one that is behind. Her words fall out of the blue sky and chase the jealousy from his mind. Who is it you want to kill? There is a short pause. He considers her, and she lifts those blue eyes up to meet him. Peripherally, he sees Sakura roll around and prop herself up on her elbows. He doesn't know what he hopes to find there, but there is something in the slight furrow above her eyes. A part of him rebels at it. Something deep and innate tells him that there is no going back, and he balks. It's none of your business, he grinds out. Maybe he hits a little harder in sparring that day, a little more vicious when he manages to catch the girl that flies with uncanny speed around his punches and pulls her hits as light taps. Kakashi gives him a long, hard, considering look for his victory spelled out in purple on Naruto's arm, and he returns to an empty home that night with bruises of his own. The bruises fade, but the question and her accepting expression stay etched into his mind. He doesn't need understanding, trust, or anybody to stand by him. He doesn't want it. Sasuke lies himself to sleep that night. Sakura is literally shocked speechless when she spots Naruto in the store. In the lingerie store. Holding a BR at arm's length and examining it doubtfully. The attendants are nowhere to be seen, and the overhead speakers only play quiet radio music, so she uses every ounce of shinobi quiet that she has picked up in the past 1.5 weeks and sneaks up behind her ever self-possessed teammate. Is this your first time buying a BR? She asks, perhaps a little louder than necessary. Naruto jumps and whirls around to face her, blonde hair flying and blue eyes wide. This. For a second, Sakura considers her. Naruto has always seemed so far beyond her, even beyond Sasuke. She's unnaturally fast, quicker than Sasuke by a solid margin even though he's always been the best in the class. Her chakra control is nearly as good as Sakura's, and she seems to know about everything. When Sakura stands next to Naruto, she feels shorter, uglier, and less adequate. When she sees her accomplishments, Sakura feels as though she has been wasting her life. It's a nasty feeling, and she hates it and she hates herself, and most especially she hates Naruto for making her feel as if she could have been something more if only. Sakura has always been good enough. Good enough for her parents, good enough to beat Ino, good enough to top the Academy Kunoichi in training rankings every month. She's always been smart enough, pretty enough, talented enough. But in the past week she's realized that she could have been better, and her bygone victories taste like ashes in her mouth. And she blames it all on the girl that arrived with all the force of a natural disaster. Uzumaki Naruto and her persistent efforts, her dedication, her composure, Uzumaki Naruto and the way she manages to be everything Sakura thinks she could have been if only. But standing there in the pink and white store as Naruto quickly blushes fire engine red and moves the BR out of sight, Sakura has an epiphany. She giggles and tugs on Naruto's arm. "Don't be so embarrassed. Let me help you out." After an afternoon of talking about the brooding, but hot, Sakura adds with a giggle buttes on their team, the pros and cons of short hair, and the best specialized weapons, they stumble out of Yukinoa's weapons. Naruto with a new BR, Sakura with a new set of weapons, and each with a new friend. Sakura thinks to herself that, while Naruto is no Ino, she's not that bad at all. And while polishing her new kunai on her bed, her eyes drift to a worn red ribbon in a patch of dust-free wood, and she wonders if maybe it's time to rekindle old fires and rebuild burnt bridges. "Who do you want to kill?" Sasuke pauses before sinking into an offensive kata. In his peripheral vision he sees Kakashi glance sharply their way. It irks him, since despite his superior strength and daily training Naruto matches him almost evenly in taijutsu. The bruises he leaves on her, she pays back in full, and hers are gone the next day. Yet every time Kakashi gives him an acutely disappointed look that says, "Didn't your mother ever teach you to be nice to girls?" When he's clearly the one that assigned them to spar together anyway. Sasuke's mother was a woman who dominated the family with quiet strength, subtle and elegant. That graceful power is one he sees in the kunoichi walking the streets of Konoha, the same ideal that the girls in the academy aspired to and failed to be. But Naruto's strength is breathless and unwavering, solid and overwhelming, undeniable despite his best efforts. She is unshakable, a solid foundation, the kind that nations were built on. It is a strength that lies not only in the quantifiable, not only in solid hits and monstrous chakra. He grits his teeth. No matter how good she is, no matter how persistent, no matter how relentlessly friendly, she's nothing more than a distraction. A distraction and a danger. Why, just a moment ago she had him thinking about his mother again. Sasuke can't afford thoughts like those. Inside his chest there is a black abyss with Itachi's name on it, a plunging hole where everything else used to be. There is no room for anything but justice. He has to make things right. "It's none of your business," Sakura concludes, stumbling into her house with already throbbing muscles and barely making it to collapse on the couch, that Uzumaki Naruto is a demon. "Sakura!" Her mom calls from the bathroom, confused and questioning. Sakura always works like clockwork, precise and timely. "You're late today." "Training," she manages to groan loudly. "With my demon-possessed teammate." She fights back a dry heave and considers the long walk to the bathroom. Her body will be torture tomorrow. Sakura thinks about staying home as sick, but the realization that Naruto will be out there at some awful morning hour sparks that recently rekindled competitive fire in her. After happening upon her teammate cooling down before the team meeting, Sakura joined her for her late afternoon workout. When she feebly left for home, Naruto was still going strong. As Sakura drags herself to the bathroom, she swears in her mind that she won't be left behind forever. Kakashi regards them. And maybe he smiles a little, underneath the mask. "So I had this nice little test planned out for you," he tells their wary faces. "You were going to compete with one another and I was going to lie to you and make you hate each other." They're unconsciously grouped together, back to back. Sasuke's eyes are on him and the girls scan the trees, knowing better than to expect him to be where he appears to be. All three turn to regard him with the utmost suspicion at his deliberate, dramatic pause. It was going to be so fun. None of them speak. Naruto returns to her peripheral tree scan, discreetly palming a kunai. He smiles again, wider, crinkling his visible eye. He notes Sakura draw in a shaking breath at his change in expression. Perhaps he's been a little HRD on them the past couple of weeks. I've changed my mind. They tense, and a glance later scatter into the foliage. A bit extreme, to be sure, but they know him well enough after 3 weeks of training, torment. He finds their caution prudent enough. Besides, this is their belated graduation test, and perhaps the death release form he had them sign yesterday gave them some ideas. He speaks, still tracking them, well aware that they can hear him. The test is simple. Survive until noon. Like any exercise Kakashi decides to participate in, it is less of a fight and more of a continually breathless excursion in evasion. Even then they know he is holding back. A week ago, Sakura showed up with a white face and an entire stack of books dedicated to their teacher, the elusive, eccentric, and evidently incredibly skilled copy ninja of Konoha. They skimmed the vague public reports on his exploits, which were frankly quite ridiculous. Even Sasuke visibly reacted to a couple, and returned the next day with a new appreciation for the man. Pervert he may be, perpetually late and purveyor of the most awful jokes known to man, but Hatake Kakashi is no doubt a living legend, too big for even a shinobi to hide. It doesn't make his jokes any less tasteless. Thus, when they meet a couple hundred meters to the right of the original clearing, they spare no time for wasted words. Breathless suggestions tumble into the air. Though all three are perhaps the most prideful of their graduating class, all know better than to overestimate themselves. Unspoken and instantly understood is the implication that they needn't win. Kakashi has only asked them to survive. Is he even allowed dash? Sakura breathes, stamina and speed still nowhere near up to par to Naruto, who catches her breath within scarce moments, or Sasuke, who arrived half a minute ago and is still relaxed. Sakura, Sasuke snaps, though not unkindly. Sakura remembers the death release form and gulps down a strangled sob, reaching within herself to find that recently cultivated strain of calm and determination. 2 hours, till noon, Naruto murmurs. Too long, Sasuke snarls. Naruto glances sharply at him. While he appears stoic, Sasuke is just as emotional as Sakura. He catches the look, eyes as sharp as an Uchiha's ought to be, and forces down his ire a little. They know better than to break apart now. Kakashi made it plenty obvious within the first 2 days that they had barely a snowball's chance in the sun's raging fires even while working together and pooling their resources. Pride is a difficult thing to beat down, and emotions are heavy things to release, but, academy lessons aside, they are each and every one well versed in masks. They aren't quite comfortable with each other yet. Their trust is still unstable. The daily high-tension escapades helpful but relatively few, little time spent outside of maniacal improvement in the face of the inexorably approaching deadline. But Naruto has not lived as herself most of her life, and the others are no different. They aren't a team yet, but they can DMN well pretend to be. And the bonds, while fragile, have nevertheless formed over last-minute plans, frantic training and constant, shared failures. No fighting in village. Sakura breathes between breathes. They share a look that speaks more than breathless words could at this point. Training Ground 7 is not far from the village, and they are far from delusional. No close combat, Naruto suggests, looking at Sasuke. I'm not stupid, he mutters. Evasive number 3. Tried that Monday, Sakura gasps. 2, Naruto says. Sakura gives her a sharpest look. Evasive number 2 was a product of desperation, and calls for Naruto to engage in close range and put herself in the dangerous position of encountering not only Kakashi, but also Sakura and Sasuke's admittedly imperfect aim. But there is no time for further planning. As Kakashi watches hidden from their knowledge in the treetops above, they depart. Sakura runs point, fingers molding the outlines of a perception-affecting genjutsu she picked up by necessity last week. Naruto brings up the rear, stretching chakra senses out to her fullest extent, while Sasuke scans with eagle eyes and prepares his favorite fire technique. Kakashi smiles, just a little, underneath his mask. Hope he has long forgotten tugs up the corners of his mouth without his bidding. It's a feeling he hopes he won't lose for a long time yet. It is a little cruel, Naruto thinks, how far Kakashi allows them to travel before he attacks. They are scant minutes from the borders of the nearest residential area, barreling ahead at full speed, so close to the end goal and yet unwilling to hope. Hyper-aware, they've had two false reactions. The mistakes do not slow their hearts or lessen the adrenaline. Their response to his actual attack is quick. Instantly, Sakura releases her chakra, forming the last seal, and jumps into far-range support. Sasuke releases his fireball nearly simultaneously, retreating and beginning hand seals for the phoenix flowers. Naruto darts right to meet Kakashi as the fire burns itself out with a sweep of her right leg. A quick exchange of punches, he indulges her by not overpowering her immediately. There is a sharp crack that Sakura winces at, but Naruto doesn't retreat, relying more heavily on her undamaged right arm. Every time Sakura sneaks in a shuriken, he evades with such speed it seems more like a missed throw than a dodge. There is a flare of chakra as Sasuke finishes his technique. Naruto disengages and retreats, scraped and bruising, guarding a limp left arm close to her side. With choreographed accuracy, she follows Sakura in the mad dash onward as fire rains down. But Kakashi is already in front of them, kunai slicing through the air. Sakura evades in her peripheral vision and Naruto snatches the handle, a twist of her elbow slicing the metal back at him. When his hands come together, Naruto curses under her breath. Kakashi rarely uses techniques, but when he does it is deliberate and slowed for their benefit. They escape before the slicing wind gale hits, but even at the range of her farthest forward kawarimi, Sakura bears the periphery of the technique. She grunts as small, paper-cut-like incisions pepper her skin and directs chakra for a breathless second movement to join Naruto. Sasuke arrives seconds later, breathing from exertion. Naruto turns to leave but Sakura touches her sleeve in reminder that not all of them bear her admirable recovery rate, and they wait precious moments for Sasuke's tired but stubborn ascent. This time Naruto takes the lead, Sakura and a winded Sasuke behind by mere steps in their breakneck pace for the now visible rooftops that signify freedom. With debilitating ease, Kakashi steps in their path again. He sighs. Where have I gone wrong? All my cute little students are running away from me. He smiles. He's seen two already, now for the last. Sasuke realizes something is wrong almost immediately after he moves in to attack. He disengages from close combat to where Sakura and Naruto have fallen prey to the hidden mole technique that Kakashi favors, probably for the humiliation factor. Sakura's eyes are downcast, her expression vaguely resigned. Naruto is visibly struggling at the dirt, but it will take her long minutes to unearth herself. She glares at Kakashi venomously. Kakashi crinkles one eye at Sasuke. How about it? I won't attack you if you want to run. He waves one hand invitingly at the rooftops visible, scant seconds from them. Konoha laws allow no fighting in the residential area. Sasuke will be safe as long as he gets there. He thinks fleetingly of the scroll, heavy in his hands, weighty legal words and the signature in BLD. He thinks of Kakashi, who despite it all has not been a bad teacher, targeting weak points unerringly and willing to lend a hand. And Sasuke thinks of 3 weeks spent under torturous pressure, meeting each day to discover a new way to fail horribly, and yet somehow getting by on lunch planning sessions and panic training. It is far, far later that Sasuke realizes Itachi did not shadow his thoughts that moment. That, indeed, the weight of his brother had not crushed Sasuke during those 3 weeks like it so often did before. Naruto is perhaps 2 minutes from freeing herself. Sasuke calculates, and finds himself lacking. He can't hold Kakashi off for even 2 seconds, and he knows this all too well. He eyes the rooftops again, and something heavy and warm chokes his throat, sliding down to settle on his chest. It's not an unpleasant fear, somehow. He slides into a defensive position before his teammates. What? You pass, Kakashi reiterates, this time just amused. But Sakura sputters, not quite able to process this development. It's not even 11 o'clock yet. I'm feeling nice, Kakashi offers. And I quite like you all. I think perhaps I'll keep you. He smiles again, squinting happily at the distrustful looks Naruto and Sasuke are giving him. See you tomorrow. As he walks, he channels Chakra to listen in on their rushed whispers. Is this a trick? A whimper? Careful with the arm, please. Sorry. Let's just hide out in the village for a while. Naruto, you need the hospital. I think this is a fracture. Sheet, he actually broke your arm. It'll heal. Let's go. I'm sure he's still around here somewhere. He leaps into the trees and watches them dig Sakura up with 3 hands between the two of them and flee top speed toward the village. He chuckles a little to himself, opens his book, and follows. He quite enjoys this image they have of him. Soon they'll have to trust him on the same side as them. He considers for a moment dropping in on the shared lunches they've been having recently out of desperation to plan for whatever he's planning on putting them through. Still chuckling quietly to himself, he shakes his head. Perhaps they deserve a day's break from him. Tomorrow at last, they'll be a team. The words feel the air before they arrive, cautiously, like wild animals. Who do you want to kill? He sighs heavily and turns his face away from her. The sun is eating away at the horizon, BLD hues scattered across the sky, but soon the crimson will wash out, and the world will be plunged into darkness. His heart revolts, but his lips move without his command. The man who killed my clan. The words tumble out of his traitorous mouth, and his rebellious heart lightens as if some great burden fell from it. He has never spoken of it, not even to the persistent Yamanaka, not even to the countless counselors. After all, secrets lose power when spoken. And what will you do after you kill him? For a brief, incredulous moment Sasuke does not understand. His heart beats loudly. His mind explores this new terrain, chasing sudden and uninvited thoughts and half-formed, old dreams, some vague and distant laughter, kind eyes, a home and supper on the table every night and life. Life after Itachi. Incomprehensible. But it is as if a seed sprouted in his renegade heart. He shoves it away violently, locks it up, and spits at her. That doesn't matter. Sasuke refuses to meet her eyes. Naruto's blue eyes that always tell him too many things that he doesn't want to know, he can't bear to face them now. Then, she begins after an uncomfortable silence in which Sasuke can neither bear to run away nor meet her gaze. What do you think killing him will do for you? What? It comes across surprised and weak, spilling out before he can consider her question or his response. He looks up and blue captures him. Will it bring you closure? Naruto asks flatly, a question that expects no answer. Will it bring your family back? He's drowning in blue. Will it make you happy? The words explode out of him. You don't understand. It sounds childish, hanging in the air between them. He repeats it more calmly, injecting the venom always in his heart. You don't understand. It's vengeance. I am an avenger. Somehow, the words he has always held in his heart feel weak. It is justice. She looks away from him, and after a moment he thinks it's over, but then she lets out a long sigh. Do you think Namake's Minato is a good man? She asks. There's a strange shade of wistfulness in her voice. Blindsided and uncomprehending, Sasuke makes a noise of agreement. There was a man, a ninja, who went to war, she says, her words picking up speed as she continues. He left his wife and a 2-year-old daughter at home to fight for the ideals of his country, at the order of his Kage. But the battlefield was a slaughter. Neither he nor anybody there returned alive. His wife died from grief, not eating enough to sustain herself, and his son lived to hate the single man who stood against him on that battlefield, Namake's Minato. Do you know, Sasuke, that there are hundreds of sons out there? Hundreds upon thousands, each one full of hate. There is a child that was hated. Everybody thought the child was a demon, because the child was the jailer and jail of a demon. So they treated the child like a demon, hating and cursing and spitting. The child thought that they were all demons, each one full of hate, until one day the child realized that they were, all of them, just humans. And that humans are full of anger and sadness and love, and it makes them do horrible things to one another. And who can judge? We are all just humans, so what right do we have to judge? As he is still digesting this, she barrels onward. There was a girl who loved 3 different people. One was her best friend, her big sister, the other 2 the only mothers she ever knew. 2 are dead and one has been driven insane now just because they cared for her, and because somebody else thought that hurting them would protect themselves and the ones they loved. At some point she has gotten closer to him, the oceans in her eyes burning, her voice hoarse and quiet, a strangled scream killed before its beach. Tell me, Sasuke. Would killing the Hokage reverse his orders? Would killing him make Nanoko-sensei well again? Would killing myself take away their pain? Would dealing pain to others make theirs any less? Would it be right? Would it be just? Uchiha Sasuke, tell me the truth. The pause between her words is a silence too vast and horrible for him to breach. Is that justice? Into the silence of a world holding its breath, she tells him in a voice too old for her years, you can't find happiness from the past, Sasuke. You can't find justice there, or anything else. All you can find is anger and sadness and broken love, and that will make you hate, and you will become a demon fighting other demons. Whatever you're looking for, you'll have to move forward to reach it. He has lost his whole family, hundreds of Uchiha clansmen, men of pride, of hot sweet bread and his name on the streets, of tales that rocked him to sleep and fueled his dreams. He has always been the most unfortunate, the one who loved and lost the most, to somebody who shouldn't have even contemplated taking away. His family. His family. And yet somehow her pain seems to burn brighter than his own, searing his beliefs and turning them to ashes. It enrages him. Sasuke has lost his whole family, the one thing he ever had, to his brother, the one person he ever loved, and he opens his mouth to tell her that he doesn't understand, and she doesn't understand. You don't understand, she throws into the air, his own unspoken, traitorous words hitting him like a punch. Sasuke flinches. And the worst thing is that you don't want to. Your brother, whom you loved, her voice lilts wonderingly, Uchiha Itachi, the familiar rage wells up, and your entire family. You don't understand why, and you don't want to. You just want it to stop hurting, and you think that hurting him will help. The rebellious part of his heart tells him to run far, far away, but his feet are rooted, his bones struck by a suddenly overwhelming gravity. It occurs to him, then, that she has known the name of Uchiha Itachi, the answer to her question, all along, but that isn't what she's seeking. She leans in closer. You know I don't scar. He does. He's seen kunai scratches heal in minutes and horrendous bruises disappear overnight. But I have one right here. She draws a long line down her right side, lifting up her shirt where her fingers stop. He glimpses it, a wide white gash, and his mind supplies the BLD and horror. From when I was a baby. Because when people are hurt, they just want to hurt others. When they suffer, they don't want to be alone. They need to blame somebody. They think it will make it right. They think it will make the pain go away. But, Sasuke, that never works. It just becomes a chain of hurts, and in the end the scars don't go away just because you bandage yourself up with somebody else's BLD and hurt. There is a dark weight of past terrors in her eyes, of years on the street and each night full of fear and 100,000 monsters, her own city, army, nation full of Uchiha Itachis. It pins him in place and chokes his words. Namikaze Minato was a hero, she says. And before that, a ninja. But to the broken in IW, he is a monster. Your brother is your monster, she says, and his mind makes the connection and tears it apart all at once. No, he whispers, hoarsely, after the desert in his throat gathers the water to respond. I know less than you, she whispers, like a secret. So I am fortunate. Sasuke, you've been blinded by the things you think you know. No, he says like a prayer. On a stranded island, she says, there is a circular wall. There is no way to see inside from the outside, and no way to see out from the inside. Nobody has ever gone from one side to the other. The people on the inside believe the wall is keeping them safe from the people on the outside. The people on the outside believe the wall is imprisoning the dangerous people on the inside. Naruto's eyes glimmer at him meaningfully. Her voice rasps, which of them is right? In Sasuke's mind there stands a ruin of the BLD-soaked night that his family died. He runs through the streets and sees his brother and his heart shatters again and again, fire in his veins, burning broken bridges that would never rise again. And in the same place he sees a wall and the deluded people who will never see the truth of the lie they live simply because they are too frightened to reach out to the other side. He sees the Yandame's face on the mountain and the broken families in IW. In his mind, Uchiha Sasuke sees Uzumaki Naruto and he wonders. His heart, however, is hard. And even as she walks away and he ponders these things in silence and that so familiar aching aloneness, it refuses. But a seed of doubt grows, doubt in the truth that he has believed for so long. And in time, it thrives. After sleepless nights and days of thinking, it roots deep in his heart. Uzumaki Naruto doesn't transform him that night, but she plants the doubt that will. You see, the doubt wriggles inside his head and stays there. It makes him look from both sides of the wall. It makes him think about things he had never dared touch before. It makes him question things. It makes Uchiha Sasuke wise. When Kakashi arrives the next day at his customary time, after they've completed their warm-ups, morning spars, and strategy discussions for today's torture during a second breakfast, they're surprised by the scroll he tosses at them. Sakura's eyes light up. Mission. Sasuke is oddly quiet, even quieter than usual. Paired with Naruto's uncommon introspectiveness, it's downright unnatural. We're going to change up the schedule now, he says. Instead of training first, we'll do a mission, get lunch, and then train. So the mission won't take that long. Naruto asks, finally seeming to wake out of her quiet stupor. Sakura begins unraveling the scroll. I'm fully competent in your capabilities as official genin, Kakashi says, waiting for the opportune time as they gather around the scroll. Besides, whitewashing fences shouldn't take that long. It's been a day of surprises. Kakashi joins them for an awkward lunch. How are we supposed to strategize with him sitting right there? Sakura hisses indignantly as Kakashi sits there with the already empty bowls of polished-off Ichijo-sansai in front of him. Even stranger, Kakashi also stays behind after another maniac game of hide-and-seek and dodge, the variation that involves less fighting and more steel weaponry flying in their direction. They gather, as always, after practice to regroup. After the second session, when Naruto and Sakura decided that putting their heads together to plan would be preferable to another day of running around like headless chickens, Sasuke joined. Now, Kakashi sits down with them. Okay, Sakura bursts out. Today you're being unreasonably strange, Kakashi-sensei. How the heck are we supposed to plan against you when you're here with us? Ma, I thought I should get to know my cute little students a bit better. Cute, Sasuke mutters to himself, rolling his eyes. The strangeness of the day has eased him out of his introspective funk from the previous night. Kakashi smiles under the mask, an expression they've all gotten more used to distinguishing. You know, I'm not your enemy dash. Debatable, Naruto murmurs. At least consider me a valuable resource, children. There is a short pause before Naruto asks incredulously, does this mean you're here to help? In response, Kakashi turns to Sasuke. Your speed is coming along well, though you'll always be built more for power. You specialize in ninjutsu, which, despite being powerful, is not always suited to every situation. Against me, in this setting, your fire was of no use. To improve your speed, focus on chakra control and cycling through your body to the muscles in short burst style. Run with light weights on the route that takes you up the Hokage mountain stairs twice a day. Your stance and form are a little tight. Watch out for tenseness and misplacement. He pauses, taking in Sasuke's wide-eyed stare. Do you need to take notes? He teases, knowing full well that the three are trained in memorization. The next step for you in ninjutsu is testing your chakra affinity. That's a chunin skill, and we'll cover it soon. Turning to Sakura, he says, your biggest issue is stamina. You've managed to build up a decent speed, but you can't keep it up long enough. Also, you sometimes freeze up and panic when there's more than 2 threats to your person. Train your stress reactions and build up endurance by gradually training longer. Focus on getting your feet off the ground faster. You like to linger. At her nod, he continues, your chakra control is one of the best I've ever seen, but you lack chakra. Building chakra can be dangerous if you go overboard, so make sure one of us is around when you're attempting. Just do an chakra-intensive exercise until you reach about 7% reserves, and then eat, exercise physically, and meditate. You should be able to do 3 rounds of this every day, but I'd recommend only 2. Since your control is superior, Also read up on medic jutsu in the library. After you've progressed in that and genjutsu to a sufficient level, I'll find an advisor that specializes in medic jutsu to help you continue your studies. Yes, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura murmurs, blushing, her mind already racing on to consider this challenge. At last he looks at Naruto. Naruto, your speed is very good, but your aim is not. Practice your aim, you'll never be a specialist, but you need be a decent shot. You pay attention to your teammates and come up with great improvisations, but when you have a plan you need to stick to it. Sasuke and Sakura have so far been very accommodating, but they need to be able to rely on you being where you've planned to be. You're not at the level you all need to be to come up with on-the-fly work just yet. Individually, you're particularly suited for ninjutsu, though up until now you've been focusing on taijutsu. Your academy style is decent, but it actually doesn't suit your body type. Read up on different styles to get a feel for the ones out there, and we'll be looking at taijutsu styles shortly. Your speed is good, and you have great stamina and reflexes, which have helped you with an ill-suited style so far. Still, it would be a waste not to take advantage of your chakra reserves and control, which would be suited to ninjutsu and maybe even fuinjutsu. Naruto considers him carefully. Why are you helping us? She asks, slower to trust than either Sasuke or Sakura. Kakashi smiles with his single visible eye. Naruto, you're smarter than this. Haven't you figured it out yet? He pauses meaningfully, then says, I'm not your enemy. I'm part of your team. I'm on your side. Perhaps something undefinable and intangible passes between them in that moment. Naruto smiles back suddenly, a bright beam, and Kakashi wiggles his fingers at them all jauntily before poofing away. So, Sakura inserts into the slightly stunned silence. Library time. She hesitates beneath the window. She eyes the trellis that her hands and feet scrambled up countless times before and the faulty window latch that, after all these years, still beckons invitingly. There is a soft golden glow coming from inside the glass. The heavy weight of 4 years of Cold War roots her feet in place. Tomorrow for sure, Sakura says and turns back home. I really hate fish, Sakura declares resolutely. Green jumpsuits, Sasuke says, in a tone that, for Sasuke, is practically a cry for help. If you feel so miserable, you can trade me places, Naruto offers. Sasuke actually lets out a short huff of laughter. Not in your wildest dreams. Fish are definitely better than Kakashi-sensei. I hate you both. Go on in, Sakura. Ino's mother's familiar voice breaks Sakura out of her inner contemplation. She offers her daughter's oldest friend a soft and knowing smile. Please. There's a note of pleading in the word. She has seen her daughter grow up and grow sad. And while Ino cannot have everything she wants for her daughter, she will do anything for every spot of happiness she can arrange for her only child. A kind of understanding passes between them. The bell tinkers lightly. Walking into the shop is like walking into a perfume store filled with the comforting scent of her mother's favorite fragrance. Walking into the shop is like walking into a battlefield with no weapons in hand but a white flag. Walking into the shop is like walking home. Ino murmurs a soft, polite greeting that loses coherency as she looks up and sees Sakura. Something caustic rises to her lips and dies just as quickly when Sakura holds out her hands, palms up. I've come to say sorry, Sakura manages to say through a mouth that feels suddenly like wind country. Some friendships are worth more. Green jumpsuits, Naruto says. And the sunset. I'm blind. I've gone blind. Save me, Sakura. Shut up, Sakura eyes into the table, her back muscles no longer capable of holding up her spine. I hate you so much right now. I hate you almost as much as I hate Kakashi-sensei. Sasuke just stares at his piece of paper like maybe intensified hatred will help it burst into flames. Is this the Naruto-chan I've heard so much about? Ino asks, her smile sharp. Her hand tightens around Sakura's. Ino is an inherently jealous person. Acerbic, talented, and an only child, she is possessive of everything she considers hers. And Sakura, her best friend long lost to the politics of teenage love and strained, barely their civility, has finally returned to her. It's the détente, the end of the arms race, and she won't let anything jeopardize that. But Naruto smiles. You must be Ino-san, she says with a laugh in her voice. It's a persuasive kind of laugh, a bubbly feeling that whispers reassurance. It's a laugh that shouts, laugh with me, Ino. I'm on your side. I'm for you. Ino leans in subconsciously before she draws on 12 years of living with her father and recoils a little. The smile is still there, though Sakura is now looking at her with concern. I've heard so much about you, Naruto continues. Sakura now turns confused eyes on Naruto. She hasn't said much about her strained friendship with Ino, broken since the day she decided she didn't need to rely on the rock that had supported her anymore. Naruto's eyes are captivating. Her smile is inviting. When Ino looks at her, she feels like Naruto has seen all of her and judged her, and found her lovely. It's a familiar expression. It's one her daddy wears all the time. But there's a falter, a crack. Naruto's eyes break away. They sweep the horizon and something like pain or longing or bitter jealousy crosses fleetingly in the reflection of blue skies. You're a lucky girl, Ino-san, Naruto says quietly. You are loved so much. The words stay with Ino that day, and many days afterward. Even when Sakura apologizes laughingly for her teammate, Naruto's fun, but she can get a little weird sometimes. Don't worry about it. Ino considers the longing and the sentence and wonders. Ino has never considered herself lucky. She's normal, and yeah, she's appealing and smart, and her daddy loves her. But she's just Ino, and these things are just natural. Love is something that happens like the sunrise every morning. She's never questioned it, nor has she ever found it fortunate. But there's a ring of truth in that longing statement that makes Ino hug her daddy tighter that day, and hold on to Sakura's hand, and tell her mother she loves her. There's a bit of truth in blue eyes that makes Ino wonder if she's taking things for granted. 2 pieces of paper and a rock lie on the counter as they wait for the food to arrive. 3 pairs of eyes regard their respective objects wearily. It's not just a matter of projecting chakra, Naruto murmurs. But getting the right kind of chakra? How do you generate wind-natured chakra? What does it feel like? Isn't this supposed to come naturally? Sakura bemoans. Wind is swift and changing, Naruto mutters to herself. Sharp and light, but also heavy. Sasuke keeps staring at his paper like maybe his rage, grown and nurtured for a week already, will manifest in flames and eat up the paper. A C-rank mission, Kakashi says, and his students all turn to look at him suspiciously. No more painting fences. Sakura whispers to Naruto. No more cats. Naruto whispers back, gleefully. Sasuke says nothing, but all his teammates can sense his barely contained energy. The Hokage considers them all for just a moment, trying not to dwell on the way Naruto's eyes refuse to meet his. He sighs heavily, feeling as if the very air is heavier today. Gravity pulls down on his limbs and draws words from his mouth. Minato, Kushina-chan, where did I go wrong? Very well. Team 7, a C-rank mission. Irika says nothing as he hands Kakashi the scroll. His face is pale. Sarutobi knows that guilt weighs heavily on the young man, and he knows that it confuses Irika, because Irika's mind knows he did the right thing. But Sarutobi also knows that right is not so easily defined. And he holds that power, the incomprehensible power to say what is proper in this country. It is a responsibility that is too heavy to bear. There are many things he does not say to Team 7 in that moment. There are many things that pass through his mind that will never reach his lips. I am now sending you out to kill. I am now sending you out to die. I am sending you into a realm of shadow. Perhaps you are bored. Perhaps you thirst for action, for fighting and for glory and for vengeance. Perhaps that is what you think you longing. I am now sending you into a place where all that is possible. And one day you will realize that it is not what you want. You will realize that you've lost things of great importance. You will turn around and wonder what it all was for, and then you will answer yourself with a lie so that you can keep living. I am now going to ruin you. And for that, I am sorry. But he says nothing at all. Sarutobi watches them walk out the door into the future they have unknowingly run enthusiastically toward. He turns and beckons the line forward. Next,